Welcome to the Township of Whitewater Region regular council meeting for Wednesday, October 18th. We're going to call ourselves to order at 4:45 p.m. And I'll just note, Councillor Olmsted is running a little bit late, so he'll be arriving shortly. And Councillor Bell is on duty tonight at the fire hall. He just received somewhat of a pull away from the desk, so as soon as he's available, he'll log back on. You may see him log on and off. The clerk will be tracking that.
The person here, Walker, wants to come to this meeting. How do we get here?
Oh, well, thank you for bringing that out. We've got some staff that'll help that out.
No, she can't do stairs at all.
Perfect. So there'll be some staff to help her out. Thank you.
Okay.
We have an elevator.
Okay.
Perfect. Next step is we'll just all ask you to rise for the Canadian Anthem and face the flag. Thank you. Please take your seats. Next item for us tonight is our land acknowledgement. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So the recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the October 18th, 2023 agenda. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Trim, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any questions, changes? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Next item is the adoption of some minutes. First item is the regular council minutes of October 4th. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the October 4th, 2023 regular minutes. Again, a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Moore, Councillor Tabbert. Any omissions or changes that are noted in those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next, we have two minutes from committees and boards. The first is the minutes of the Cobden Recreation Association meeting. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the minutes of the Cobden Recreation Association held October 13th, 2023. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Tabbert, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Carried. Next item are some minutes of the Beachburg Recreation Association. 3 sets of minutes held September 14th, 18th, and then a meeting summary. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive, in addition to the meeting summary, the minutes of the Beachburg Recreation Association meetings held September 13th, 2023, and September 18th, 2023, respectively. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Tangled up. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Thank you. And I'll just make a note before we proceed. Having these Recreation Association minutes enclosed in the agenda is an excellent, it's nice to see how they are organizing and what they're doing within their communities. So it's an excellent way for us to stay informed. Next, sorry? If I can just ask staff to open that door when possible. Yeah, thank you. Excellent. Next item is number 5, disclosures of interest by any of the members of council, and I'll just look around the table. None. And clerk, I'll just ask if you can remind me when Councillor Bell and Councillor Olmsted join us that I also asked them that question. Thank you. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 6 is presentations in public meetings. The first item that we have tonight is a presentation that's going to be provided to us from the Renfrew County ATV Club, Mr. Kris Raby. If you could please make your way up to the microphone. And I understand you have a PowerPoint presentation? I do. Excellent. Oh, the guys are already on it. Excellent. So just for our listeners, I'll just get you to give yourself a little bit of an intro. And you can jump right in.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council, Whitewater staff, and fellow residents. My name is Kris Raby. I'm here representing the Renfrew County ATV Club. I'm their second vice president. I am also a proud resident of Whitewater region. I brought with me today Greg Tatton. He's our president of the club. He doesn't live in Whitewater, but that's okay. This evening our goal is just to introduce the Renfrew County ATV Club to council and staff. To give council and staff a brief overview of our club activities and showcase some things that we do throughout the year. I thought I'd start with a slide with some outdated information on it, but it's still good. From 2016, there was a survey done showing that basically trail tourism in Renfrew County equated to about $3 million worth of money brought to Whitewater and the greater Renfrew County. In 2021, riderships increased quite a bit. I think the trending over the last couple of years, everyone's seen that trail tourism and the power sports industry has really increased over the years. I think that number today is probably closer to 15 to 20 million. So who are we as a club? We are a member club of the Ontario Federation of ATV Clubs, which has 25 partner clubs, all in Ontario, all selling the OFATV pass. We are the largest club in Ontario, encompassing the entirety of the OFATV District 6, which is all of Renfrew County. We operate and maintain over 1,000 kilometers worth of trail, and currently have a membership of over 2,000 riders. We are the premier destination for trail riders in Ontario. We bring in tens of thousands of riders into Renfrew County and Whitewater region every year. We also have a seat at the OFATV table at the provincial level, where we discuss tourism and other items of interest for the power sports industry. Who are our riders? Established in 2007, as you can see from the list here, we've grown significantly over the years. These are riders here with a OFATV membership that they've dedicated RCATV as their home club. You'll see on the right here that there's a bit of a demographic of riders coming into our area. They're not just residents who live here in the Ottawa Valley. They come from Ottawa, they come from Eastern Ontario, they even come from out of province, and in some cases from like out of country. Anyone with an OFATV permit can ride our trails here at RCATV in District 6, and as well as any of the other 25 associated clubs. We've also in 2019, OFATV signed a reciprocal agreement with the Off-Road Vehicle Federations of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island, so that enables visitors to come ride our trails without having to buy an extra pass. What we do. So we're in the business of sustainable trail management and trail tourism. We support landowners who allow us to pass through their properties. We often partner with other stakeholders in the region. Here in Whitewater, we partner with the snowgoers often to work on small projects. Right now we're working with them to redeck some bridges on the beach trail outside of Beachburg. We like to promote tourism, where we can connect with local businesses, offer points of interest markers on our trail map system, and we also have corporate membership programs for local business who want to support the Renfrew County ATV and trail tourism through sponsorship involvement. We're advocate for the One Trail, One Pass system. In Ontario, currently the off-road vehicle organizations in Ontario are fragmented with a few independent clubs and associations, with the majority being part of the recognized Ontario Federation. A single permit will increase the rider experience, reduce confusion, and further support trail tourism in our area and others. What do we got here? RCATV was the first club within Ontario to, within the Ontario Federation of ATVs, to take initiative to adopt a technicality rating system for our trails. As you can see on the right side of the slide here, much like a ski hill, you have beginner, intermediate, expert, and super expert, most difficult. The intention is to help guide both experienced and new riders towards trails they can safely ride while gaining experience with their machines and navigating different kinds of terrain. This year, in 2023, this trail rating system was adopted across the whole Ontario Federation of ATV clubs. Being a volunteer-run organization, we invest thousands of hours, volunteer hours, to keep the trails safe through maintenance and education. We also support landowners. Landowners, we can't have a trail without them. So we support landowners with about $15 million in third-party liability insurance. We respond to individual landowner concerns regarding hazards and trail conditions. We provide grading, signage, culvert response, tree storm response, and general brushing to trails on private land. We support lands owned by municipalities like yourselves with projects for maintenance and trail systems owned and operated, for projects for maintenance and other activities. About 90% of our annual expenses invested in actual trail maintenance to maintain the system. Safety training. We have certified instructors for both ATV and ORV, which are side-by-sides, providing youth and adult ATV rider safety training in partnership with the ATV Safety Institute. Greg, are you a trainer? I can't remember. You train? Are you an ORV trainer? Yeah, so Greg's a certified trainer in our area. We have an extensive trail warden training program recognized and respected in partnership with the OPP Snowmobile ATV Vessel Enforcement, the SAVE team, and the County of Renfrew paramedics. Our RC ATV often promotes with other partners with other trail users groups and municipalities to promote rider safety and etiquette. In 2024, so next year, the Ontario Federation of ATV is expected to be launching a new online youth training series to target the next generation of rider to be more safe on trails. The roles of the warden program. We recognize that in order to have a safe and accessible trail to support trail tourism destinations, we have to manage trails within communities. Part of the effort and support is to ensure that we promote trail etiquette, sharing trails with non-motorized users, and addressing safety concerns. The warden program is not an enforcement program. It's a positive presence program, positive presence on the trails to help educate and guide riders. The trail warden program helps to identify areas of concern for landowners and gain information to propose good sustainable solutions. Wardens regularly pair up with OPP and local regulators in the field as ambassadors for trail safety and etiquette, but they're not police. Trail etiquette. Trail etiquette is important in trail tourism. There are plenty of trails that are multi-use pathways, much like the Algonquin Trail VRT that runs through Cobden here in Whitewater, that see a number of other kinds of users like cyclists, pedestrians, and horseback riders. It is important that we help riders be good stewards of the sport and respect other trail users with good etiquette like speed management, yielding to other users, and being good stewards of the environment and surrounding lands. In Ontario, 2 provincial acts govern the use of off-road vehicles: the Highway Traffic Act, using the roads and public right-of-way, and the second is the Off-Highway Vehicles Act, which governs off-road. Moving forward, we identified some opportunities for partnership with Whitewater Region. Upon land transfer of the rail bed, we'd like to consider assist in the adoption of a bylaw to cover the rail beds, including speed. This will enable OPP and others to better enforce speed on the rail bed. We'd like to look at land use agreements for a trail pass to be required on the trail, on the B trail, as it is right now, which is the CN line, which will provide our CATV with funding for trail projects. We'd also love to participate in building an annual trail maintenance plan with Whitewater Region, the Whitewater snow goers, and ourselves. We'd love to collaborate on local events. Beachburg Agriculture Society held a poker run. We'd love to be part of that. Cobden held one as well. That was a good one. We'd love to be part of that. We'd also like to look at, we'd like to request a memorandum of understanding to assign some roads to complete the trail between B Trail up in Beachburg and the OVRT down here towards Haley Station, using roads that are marked by signage and that are safe for use for four-wheelers. We'd love to have Whitewater Region promote ATV safety and trail tourism articles in local newspapers, and we'd like to be part of your website as club members to promote trails and trail safety in our area. I think, oh, there's one more. Keeping trails open and safe takes a lot of users. We have a 360 approach. It's not just riders and landowners, it's industry, tourism, volunteers, all those together make a good trail and keeps the trail system growing. That's it. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And let us know if you have any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Raby. I just also wanted to add, I know you didn't mention it in there, but an example was your support when Moxham Road culvert washed out.
Yeah.
And the impact on the trail. I know the landowners appreciated you stepping in with some ideal support at the time. So thank you. And with that, I'll open it up to council. Is there any questions or comments that you'd like to make for Mr. Raby?
I don't like ATVs, but I do think that you do show a lot of respect when I walk down the track. So
Thank you.
I'm confident in that.
Thank you.
Good. If there's no questions or comments from council, what I would like to just highlight.
He's a joiner.
Thank you. I really enjoy, like the presentation was great. I love how you outline the things that you want to work with us on, and I'm sure that staff is going to be on top of that and be able to bring back recommendations to council when we're prepared and ready for that portion of the agenda. Good?
We'd like to see that there's no seats.
Excellent. We'll just finish what we're doing just for one moment, and we'll see if we can find some extra seats.
That'd be great.
Thanks. Good. If there's nothing else for Mr. Raby, thank you so much for your time
Thank
tonight.
you. Appreciate your time.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Good. Good. Is there any seats available for some additional people? And if you are finished, we can take a pause here if you wanted to step out.
I can even get over there and stand there.
Stand by the wall?
Yeah, you can certainly stand by the wall. There's two seats here, and there's no longer a seat there, so it's used here.
What's your fire code here? How did you do last fire code?
I'm just going to give him a second to sit down. Perfect. Next, we're going to step into the next item on our agenda, which is 6.2, Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw Review, which is a public meeting. So at this point in the regular council meeting, we'll pause, and we will open and call a public meeting to order at 5:05 p.m. This meeting will commence with a presentation by EcoView Consulting Services Incorporated, who provide us with information on what municipal zoning actually is, why the municipality requires a zoning bylaw, and an update on the review process to date. There will be an opportunity following for the public to ask questions of clarification or to make comments. I'll begin just by reminding everyone in attendance that the purpose of this public meeting is to gather your input and feedback. I will ask that everyone in attendance please respect the decorum of the council chambers and refrain from behavior intended to disrupt this important portion of tonight's meeting. Next, I'd ask Planner Benzie to kindly provide us with some important information pertaining to the public meeting process.
Thank you, Mayor Nicholson. Just before I talk about the appeal rates, I just want to make sure we have a piece of paper where we can collect. Oh, we've got that. Okay. Are they going to be up there?
I'll distribute them when they come up.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so the appeal rights. If any person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Whitewater Region before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council or the council of the Township of Whitewater Region to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Section 3419 of the Planning Act states that not later than 20 days after giving of notice of passing of the bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submission at the public meeting or made a written submission to council before the bylaw was passed, or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, may appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. So with that, I'm actually going to hand things off to our consultant, Kent Randall, who is joining us virtually today to guide us through this presentation and an update on the project and where we are. Thanks, Kent.
Thanks, Alex. So I see that my presentation's up there, so that's good. Hello, everyone. My name is Kent Randall. I'm the principal at PW Consulting Services. As Alex pointed out, we're the consultant responsible for assisting the township with updating or providing a comprehensive zoning bylaw. And as I pointed out, shown here on the opening slide, this is the second installment of the meeting that we had. We did have a public meeting back in early July. So this is, I think we voted it out, it was like we're going to go back for another public meeting, and I was explaining kind of what the process is, where we're at, and where we're going. So next slide, please. So I have been asked to go over sort of the general outline of what zoning is. Just for the sake of people who are just coming around, who weren't at the last meeting. So zoning in a nutshell controls the use of land, buildings, and structures. That's the most general way of putting it, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. All of this is provided in the Planning Act, so the Ontario Planning Act, Section 34 gives municipalities the right to prohibit land use within their municipality, and they can control land use and how it is cited, where it's cited, where it can occur, the types of buildings and structures that are associated with it, and so on. From a high level, general level, the zoning is intended to implement policies and official plans. The township, in this case, the county of Renfrew, has an official plan that acts as an official plan to all the lower tier municipalities, including Whitewater Region. And zoning is supposed to take those policies, which are in the official plan, there seems to be an outlook for 20 years in terms of how a municipality is going to grow, where it's going to grow, what needs to be protected, and what needs to be encouraged to happen. So a zoning bylaw is supposed to implement them. So it's to take those policies and actually provide action in terms of what happens on a site-by-site basis. The most common things that we see in a zoning bylaw are provisions and law regulations. So things, standards, essentially, performance standards, as we call them, setbacks, frontages, areas, area requirements, what's permitted in certain zones. And the municipality is divided, the entirety of the municipality is divided into various zone categories that have corresponding setbacks and requirements for frontage and lot area and permitted uses. So I put here as an example, so like you have your residential zones, commercial zones, industrial zones, etc. And the other major component of the zoning bylaws are the general provisions, which apply to either the entirety of the municipality or general areas or multiple zones within the municipality. So the common ones, general provisions are accessory structures. So, you know, provisions related to garages, provisions related to storage structures and things like that. Also, provisions related to non-compliant or non-conforming situations where you have existing buildings and uses that don't comply or conform to the current zoning that are still legally allowed to exist. You know, as the primary goal, a zoning bylaw has to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform to that overarching official plan that I mentioned. And in this case, it's the County of Renfrew official plan. And there are specific policies in the county plan that apply only to Whitewater region as well. So why does Whitewater region need a new zoning bylaw? The main reason is that there are currently 4 different zoning bylaws that are in effect in the township, and that's a result of the amalgamations from about 20 or so years ago that occurred. Those existing zoning bylaws that were in place were never updated or put together into one comprehensive zoning bylaw that would apply to the entirety of the amalgamated municipality. So in this case, the 4 are the former village of Cobden zoning bylaw, former village of Beachburg, which is really just a patchwork. It's not really a comprehensive bylaw in itself, but it's a patchwork of bylaws. And the 2 big ones, the former township of Westmeath and the former township of Ross. So the biggest aspect to all of this is the most, I guess, challenging part of this is taking all of those together, merging them into one comprehensive bylaw that was consistent, because not all of these zoning bylaws lined up. You could have, you know, a situation that you couldn't, that would be completely different or slightly different in Ross in terms of what you could do or couldn't do according to the zoning. So, and as I've said here, there are a lot of them are similarities that were sort of created out of, you can see the similarities just based on the fact that they're all County of Renfrew sort of initiated zoning bylaws, but there are a lot of differences between them that had to be reconciled. So, in terms of what we're bringing here tonight or this evening, as I said, there was a previous session on July 5th, and we've taken that zoning bylaw, we've updated it in accordance with comments that we have received from council, from the public, from agencies, from the county, and taking those comments, and as best as we can, we've tried to reflect those comments, provided those comments make sense and are consistent and conforming with the overarching policies that I had mentioned. For the most part, the edits from the previous version are primarily related to the map. And mapping is, I would say, the biggest part of this exercise has been mapping more than anything, right? So you're taking not just the 4 different zoning bylaws, but the maps associated with those zoning bylaws, the schedules, as we call them, weren't digitized. So we had to take them, basically make them digital and create a new mapping across the entire township. And so it was a significant undertaking to do that mapping. So a lot of it was just correcting any sort of inconsistency, ensuring that we have the exception zones, the multiple specific exception zones that are within hundreds within all the former municipalities, and putting them together and ensuring that they're accurately reflected on the map. There's been some refinement to the text. It's not terribly significant from what was previously brought before council, but what I've shown in here is just some of the examples of transitional provisions, and showing that the existing applications that the township has before it under the Planning Act are entered as those bylaws are being prepared and replaced with this new comprehensive zoning bylaw, but those ones that were submitted prior to that are reviewed under the regulations and the provisions of the previous, of the zoning bylaw that was in effect at that time. So, for example, if I submitted a site plan application now in Westmead, I am subject to the Westmead zoning bylaw if that application is deemed complete and it's prior to when this comprehensive zoning bylaw is ultimately approved. We've added some additional provisions related to separation distances. So from primarily aggregate reserve, and dividing reserve into sand and gravel and bedrock, which is consistent, in order to be consistent or conform to the county official plan. We also cleaned up the floodplain provisions. There was a lot of different, primarily between Ross and Westmead, the differences between the floodplain and how that is dealt with, the Ottawa River floodplain, had to be reconciled and made consistent. So those are a few things. A couple other things. This was brought up, I believe, when Max provided some information to council a couple weeks ago. Shipping containers, we've added provisions related to shipping containers and permitting them in certain locations. And also a provision that allows for minor changes related to the zoning bylaws for corrections of ground or spawning areas, mapping areas as well. Correcting those without having to go to council, without having to go through a public process or planning on a process to do that. So, which is a common thing and something that's provided for in a lot of different, in many different bylaws across the province. So we've added that as well. In terms of next steps, so at this point, again, this is the second public meeting. It's not, council's not making a decision tonight. I'm not expecting to make a decision tonight. This is another opportunity for the public to provide comments, for people to ask questions, for council to ask questions. But we are expecting, based on where we are in the process, we are expecting to be able to bring this back within the next few weeks, back to council for consideration. And it honestly depends on what comments come in at this point. And I'd like to hear that comments are still being accepted. That's the OLT required preamble under the regs, where it's stated that you can provide comments up to a decision being made and eligible to appeal to the OLT. So that has to be honored, of course. But also, we want to make sure that we cover everything all the way to when this goes for consideration. And I'm going to hear that if major changes are proposed, if something comes out of this, whether it's meeting or out of the different councils we receive, that sort of requires what we would consider a major change, we would likely have to do an additional public meeting depending on the scale of that change. Because if you change that, you have to re-advertise. You have to make sure that people see another version of the plan before you move forward with adopting and improving it. So I've put in here, expect the timeline to be late November, early December for that final approval. But again, it's contingent on comments that we receive and what needs to be changed, if anything. And as I've said, that there's the minor change provision that we put in there in terms of clerical changes. So if there is, small marking changes and things like that that might not have been picked up in the digitization of the digitizing of the map, we can correct that ourselves after the fact, and it doesn't require a public meeting. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and looking forward to hearing comments from council and from the public. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kent, for that summary. Next, we'd like to turn it over for public comment. So I was looking for members of the public who would like to make comment, and we'll start with Mr. Whitehead. If you can make your way to the mic, make sure it's green, please. And if I can just get you to introduce yourself for the record and then proceed.
Can you hear me? My name's Brian Whitehead. I'm asking because I'm a red-green challenged. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, consultants, staff. My name's Brian Whitehead. I'm operations manager with the Pembroke office of JP2G Consultants. And we've been participating in the zoning bylaw update process throughout the process. We're representing 3 clients that have numerous properties within the municipality. That includes Summerhill Resorts, Wilderness Tours, and most recently the Stoop family who own multiple farm holdings in the municipality. And we submitted comments at the first public meeting, mostly technical in nature, clarification made on behalf of Summerhill and Logosland, or excuse me, Summerhill and Wilderness Tours, and then followed up after the last public meetings with more targeted questions related to the Whitewater Village Resort and Logosland, as well as Wilderness Tours property, particularly the Wilderness Tours main operations site. And we just received comments yesterday on those targeted questions, so or comments rather. And so I was pleased to hear Kent from EcoView mention that we'd have some additional time to respond to those comments because of the nature of the comments in those responses that we received from EcoView. And more specifically, in related to, like a lot of the comments that we've submitted have been accepted, which is great, like a lot of technical things. So, and as has been mentioned, there's a lot of exception zones and zoning changes that have happened over the years, and they all have to be consolidated into the new zoning bylaw. But concurrent with the preparation of particularly Summerhill and Wilderness Tours, we're actively working on detailed site plans for those projects. In the case of Summerhill, we're working on a detailed, we've actually filed a submission and have completed detailed archaeology studies, slope stability studies, environmental impact studies, and engineering studies, as well as a planning justification report. And the application hasn't been deemed complete yet because they've requested that we submit more detail on the engineering and servicing and phasing of the project, and we're just waiting for the engineers to finalize the drawings in order to file what we're calling an addendum to that application so it can be deemed complete. But the key issue there, as it is with Wilderness Tours, is a request to reduce the water setback. In the case of Whitewater Cottage RV Resort, we're optimistic that we can do that. And in both cases, we're optimistic that we can address those concerns we work with the township and their consultants and staff. They provided us with some instructions or opinions on how the submissions need to be revised in order to justify those reductions in the water setback. We're confident we can meet those criteria, but it takes a little bit of time as well. Now, in the case of Whitewater, the RV resort with Summerhill, it's fairly straightforward. In the case of Wilderness Tours, it's going to be a bit more essential that they have, like in the case of Whitewater, the RV resort, in most cases we can comply with a 30-meter setback, but there's certain areas where we need some flexibility. In the case of Wilderness Tours, it's a bit more critical, And I see Mr. Kowalski's here, and if he wants to speak to that in more detail, I'm sure he'll add to that. But we've also completed a detailed site plan application for Wilderness Tours, and we're waiting for some instructions from Mr. Kowalski on some changes that he'd like to have made to that report. So we're working through on that. And in terms of Logos land, there have been some changes that have been accepted. All the Logos land properties and the golf course are now in a tourist commercial zone, which is great. We've asked for some flexibility on the definition for a park model home. And it's not, actually, it's not park model home, it's park model RV. Because there's, and I noticed in Kurt's letter to us that it did reference park model homes, but they're not model homes at all. They're RVs, and the exception is to request the running. What happens was the running gear and the towing equipment get taken off, but they are RVs, and they're not year round, and they're recreation oriented, and we don't like to use the term home because they are an RV, because that gives a different connotation that Summerhill doesn't want to convey to the community. So we've added some flexibility to the zoning there in terms of the holding symbol that would be required for the Champlain Village property, which is a retirement community part of that development, which is great. But getting back to the water setback matter, again, like we're able to respond to those questions about complying with the criteria for reducing the setback, but we'd like some flexibility in doing that and being able to work with staff. And finally, in relation to the Stoop property, we did file a request on behalf of one of their properties most recently, and we've recommended that the change that's been made to the mapping schedules be accepted by our client, but we're still getting some direction from him on that as well. So one of the main reasons for coming here is that we need a bit of time to work through some of these changes. There still are some technical changes that we need to work through in terms of the zoning. It's great that staff and their consultant have agreed to have a consistent zoning across the Wilderness Tours property, but one of the changes from campground to commercial isn't showing up on the new maps, which are prepared just on September 27th. So that's something we'd like to tidy up to. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you for letting me go first. And if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. And I know we have a recording of this, and there's two other people taking scribe notes on all the things that are being said, but I'm acknowledging that time is the most critical thing that you're asking for,
right,
which was outlined by Kent until the decision is made at this point. Site plans,
right,
and just getting them certified complete.
We want them incorporated, submitted before council makes a decision on the bylaw.
Understood. So that's one point. Reducing the water setbacks at specific locations and the justification, so we'll note that one.
Right.
Site plans that you're continuing to work with Wilderness Tours on. Logos land, and just the park model RV versus home definition.
Yeah,
okay.
that's just that's a technical thing, yeah.
Perfect. And the Stoop property is just a mapping change that you're looking for. And there's just, you mentioned that there was something missing in the campground to commercial zoning change.
On the Wilderness Tours property, and there's also a few other things from a technical nature we'd like incorporated into that zoning as well. There was a previous zoning here a year ago. Like Wilderness Tours has two properties that are separated by a water course, and one on the furthest side was rezoned to include a number of exceptions, but it's also subject to a holding symbol. So I don't think that the exceptions got included in the zoning on the property that's currently there, and I'm sure my client would like to have those exceptions be permitted throughout his property as well. So we'll follow that up with written correspondence as well.
Perfect. I take note of that, and thank you. I'll just
Thanks.
quickly see if there's anything from any members of council, any questions or application? None? And staff? Seeing none. Thank you for taking the time, Mr. Whitehead. We
you.
appreciate you attending tonight and providing some very good comments. We'll make sure that they're included before we make any considerations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Is there another member of the public that would like to make a comment? Yes. Oh, and just while Mrs. Burns is making her way up to the mic, I'll just publicly acknowledge that Councillor Bell is online, and he arrived partway through Kent's presentation. And Councillor Bell, just for the record, did you have any declarations of interest for tonight's agenda?
No declarations tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Mrs. Burns.
I'm going to let Joe go first to follow up after.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Mr. Kowalski, if I can just get you to formally introduce yourself, and then the floor is yours.
All right. My name is Joe Kowalski. I'm the president of Wilderness Tours, and I've been a resident and business owner in this municipality going on 48 years. And so I want to just make a couple comments specifically to this process and just general development as well. So the follow-up, one of the things that we did to my own particular property, we've been in Ross Township, the Ross Township portion of Whitewater region, for 48 years. And so one of the things is that we're a water company. Being next to the water is extremely important to our business. We're a waterfront resort, and we've always operated our Whitewater resort in Ross Township, which has a 20-meter setback. And so as part of this new comprehensive zoning bylaw, instead of reducing the other municipalities to 20 meters, they want to it's going to raise Ross Township to 30 meters. And like I said, we're a waterfront company. We need to be on the water. And so we will be asking council to maintain the 20-meter setback that we've always had for the last 48 years. So that's one comment. Another comment that, and this is more of a question, so basically all these different zoning bylaws for Westmeath, Ross, Beachburg, and in our own case, over the course of doing business in the last 48 years, we've applied for and received minor variances and other things. Can I ask council, will everything that has been passed before still remain, or is there a plan to eliminate what has already been passed? So that's a question I have right now that if can be answered, because it's very, very important. A lot of things that, and I'm sure a lot of the people here that have property that have minor variances, are those minor variances going to be kept in place and brought forward in the new comprehensive zoning bylaw?
Do Mr. Kowalski, I'll reserve questions and stuff till the end. If you can just complete everything that you want to state,
sure.
and then we'll come back to it.
Not a problem. Not a problem. And so I've always maintained, and I've run unsuccessfully for a couple elections, on the idea that Whitewater Region should have its own official plan. So what I have here is that we are part of the Renfrew County official plan, and I can tell you that out of 48 years of doing business in this municipality, these last 5 years have been absolutely the worst. Started in 2019 when our federal government closed the Ottawa River, and they did with good intentions because there was sandbagging at homes, but they closed the Whitewater section where it's all Canadian Shield rock and there are no homes, and yet basically closed our business for an entire month. And I thought to myself, wow, this it can never get worse. And then a year later, we get COVID-19, and it become a lot worse because our provincial government closed our business in 2020, and we were allowed to open later in the summer, but we lost the first half of the summer in 2020 and then in 2021. And then what happens is that we then became subject to site plan control, which to me is the most insidious thing that we have in our region. I notice on the agenda tonight there's folks trying to start a microbrewery, and their site plan is up for approval. So if you don't know anything about what site plan means, is that we're required, and I guess everybody is required, to have a detailed survey of your entire property. And what happens and that's registered, and there's a legal agreement. And if you go to make any changes, now we're in a business that's dynamic. The only constant in business and in life is change. And so we change all the time. Technically and legally, we're not allowed to change one single thing in our business without the approval of Whitewater Region. So in effect, Whitewater Region runs our business and not me, that has been doing it for the last 48 years. And I really think that that is something that's so important our council has to look at. There is no freedom with site plan control, none whatsoever. And if you're subjected to it, I know when we had, for our own property, the site plan process cost us $50,000. And we can't run our business. We have to make decisions on the fly. It's just the way business is. And anyway, it's I think that we need to address that in this zoning bylaw. And I know that council and staff are anxious to proceed with it, but honestly, it's better to get it right. It really is better to get it right. It's taken a long time, and I get that, but this is so complicated. And even though I've been in business 48 years, only when I tried to develop a piece of property, and that's only been in the last 5 or 6 years, did I realize how difficult it is to do business. And I don't blame Whitewater Region. So just to get me, I blame the province of Ontario, I blame the county of Renfrew. And one of the reasons that I've always pushed for our own official plan, because everybody will say, well, it's provincial policy. And I can tell you that it is subject to interpretation. And I respect our council and our municipal staff, and I want decisions made here, and not in Renfrew County, here. But right now we don't have that, and this document proves it. We need our own official plan, and we really need council to look at this site plan control. It is so insidious. If I did not have children, I would seriously consider not doing business in Whitewater Region. And it shouldn't be that way. I've been here 48 years. And so so those are some of, and so when you read through the comprehensive zoning bylaw and our own official plan, which is Renfrew County's official plan, obviously it's got Whitewater Region up here, and everything is about, the environment. Everything's about the environment. Well, I'm in the environmental business. Nobody cares more about the environment than me. And nobody cares more about their property than the property owner. Should the government be telling you, you care about your property? I remember the old-fashioned saying, a man's home is his castle. Well, your property is your property. And it should be your property, nobody else's, and they shouldn't have to tell you what to do, and it's all about, and I'll say, well, it's to protect the environment. So I'm an avid news junkie, and on the front page of the Ottawa Citizen, those of you that subscribe to the Ottawa Citizen and still read a newspaper, on August 18th, front page of the Ottawa Citizen, the City of Ottawa conducted what was called a bypass. So that's a fancy name to confuse people, ordinary people like us. And they dumped 300 million liters of raw sewage into the Ottawa River. They call it a bypass. Well, I can tell you that Deep River does it, Petawawa does it, Pembroke does it, and I'm sure our own municipality does it in Cobden Lake. Okay, and so how on earth can they have all these rules and regulations to stop us from living on our own property? And they said, oh, it's to protect the environment. Nobody does more damage to the environment than our own government. You know, that's what people don't understand, and I'm old enough now that I'm just tired of it. And so, anyway, I would like, and I know everybody's in a rush to get this thing, but I want to get it right. And I want to deal with site plan control. I want to make sure that everything that you got approved in the past will go forward and not eliminated with the new bypass. You have to be very careful. I mean, you got to be a Philadelphia lawyer to read this stuff. And it shouldn't be that complicated. You know, I have a degree in mathematics. I can't do my own taxes. It should not be like that. And it, you know, and I know the rest of the world is that way, and the provinces are that way, and the federal government, but I don't want Whitewater Region to be that way. And I want this thing to be right, and I don't want it to be rushed through, and everything that we all care about, I want in this comprehensive zoning bylaw, and not just have it rushed through. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Kowalski. I'll highlight the setbacks as discussed with Mr. Whitehead. I'll acknowledge that one. And I'll just get staff to talk about minor variances or Kent, is that?
I can actually, maybe I'll direct that to you, Kent, and if you can just explain explain what happens with minor variances and their connection to bylaws at the time, and if you can maybe provide some comments on the provision that we've added in this updated version of the bylaw.
Sure. Thanks, Sean, and thanks to the deputant. So the minor variances, we do have a provision in what we call transition provision in the zoning bylaw that will allow the minor variances that have been approved for up to 1 year after the date of the passing of the bylaw. In those cases, when a zoning bylaw is repealed and replaced with a new zoning bylaw, those minor variances are essentially gone. And that will happen here. That'll happen here, but it won't happen for a period of 1 year after the bylaw is passed. So we've allowed for that transition to occur. A minor variance is supposed to be essentially a snapshot in time. So to permit something to occur immediately. Now, as I mentioned, there's hundreds of site-specific zones that have their own provisions, setback provisions, other performance standards. The way the setback has been brought up. Those are not changing; those are staying. Those are there, and that's what we talk about when we talk about site-specific exception zones. So those are still in the zoning, they're in the new zoning bylaw. They don't disappear. But minor variances, when they're approved, they typically don't carry over to the new zoning bylaw. However, in our case, in the case of Whitewater Region, we are proposing that transition provision to allow them to be around for up to 1 year.
You can. And just the last one, just your comment, Mr. Kowalski, just about the official plan, site plan control. I acknowledge them. They might not be specifically related to comprehensive zoning bylaw, but I acknowledge them for tonight's purpose. Perfect. Yes, would you like to redirect?
I find that totally unacceptable. These people, myself included, those minor variances are very important, and to tell us right now that we're going to pass something that everything that you have lived with and I have lived with for years and years and years is going to expire in 1 year is totally unacceptable. Totally.
Kent, would you like to redirect?
Yeah, I can respond to that. I think that's a mischaracterization of what a minor variance is. If I get, for example, if I have a minor variance that permits me to build my house close to the water, and I built my property, the minor variance is not necessary anymore. Right? It's the act of is where that ends. So, like I said, it's not second time. It's not as far as I'm concerned. It's not. It serves its purpose, and with the transition provision, and I would also point out that council, if they wish, can extend that transition provision if they feel that there needs to be more time. But certainly, my advice is intended to allow for something to occur, and it occurs, and then that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, Kent. So it's noted. Next up, Mrs. Burns. If I can get you to introduce yourself for the record, please, and floor is yours.
Yes, my name is Donna Burns. I'm a resident of Whitewater Township, and I'm also the Vice President of the Ontario Landowners Association and President of the Renfrew County chapter of the Ontario Landowners Association. Now, just quickly, in response to what Joe Kowalski was talking with respect to the site alteration areas, if I recall, and I'm going on memory here, it seems to me Section 41 in the Planning Act applies to these site planning areas to be in areas where there's multiple homes, like 10 residents or more, or where there's 3 mobile units or more. It's from what if I recall, it doesn't apply to single individual private properties. There. That's my part on that part. But anyway, now, I've been approached by a number of residents who don't understand this draft comprehensive zoning bylaw and what the purpose of it is. So I'm thankful for this opportunity to provide information that might be helpful, where I've learned through my experience and research as a vice president for the Ontario Landowners Association that will ensure council members to find the information they need to make an informed decision. It also affords me this opportunity to share with the residents that staff understand that they serve at the pleasure of council and the residents, not the other way around. After all, the Municipal Act informs the council that they are to instruct the staff. As municipal councillors, it is your job as the lawmakers, and I take that expression right out of the Municipal Councillor's Guide, a document produced by the province. Section 7 refers to familiarizing yourself with the Municipal Act and understanding where your authority lies. And as a municipal council, Section 8 explains how you exercise your powers. The purpose of this document is to protect you and the municipality you represent from liability. Now, this is the 4th time you say you brought this draft comprehensive zoning bylaw before the public. However, you chose to hold these 2 open house meetings and 1 other public meeting during business hours when the majority of the public were unable to attend. Thus, very few members of the public did attend, and therefore very few members of the public are even aware of this proposed zoning bylaw and how it was drafted to impact their private properties. This is not how a municipal council should serve its people. You are required to hold a public meeting for the benefit of the public to learn any new proposal or plan that will affect the operation of this municipality and get their consent to either approve or object to it. After all, they are the investors in this municipality, and any change you propose could either be of benefit or could harm them. They have a right to know. So the comprehensive zoning bylaw, what is it? How many people in this municipality really understand what it is? You put out this 194-page document on your website and expect the public to read it and understand what it means. Also, I'm surprised that you had to go to consultants to do this. We have here a planner, plus a former planner, plus the county planner. Why are we spending thousands of dollars to hire consultants to do this, to plan within our official plan? So, as staff, you should be familiar with the Municipal Act and the Planning Act, and you should know where your legal restrictions lie. This is mostly what I'm addressing, is the legality of this. And as Mr. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, Kent, stated earlier, it's about rules and regulations. This bylaw is presented to make it appear that it's a minor change that will make zoning easier for the staff administration purposes. You have to know it's not a minor change, as stated by your paid consultant, and I agree with him that this zoning bylaw has to conform with the county official plan, and the county official plan has to be consistent with the provincial policy statement. You say in your bylaw, this bylaw is to regulate the use of land, buildings, and structures within the township of Whitewater. And in your application of the bylaw, you specify that this bylaw is to be enforced on all lands within the boundary of this township. Under what authority do you believe you can regulate all buildings, lands, and structures? Under the authority of the Municipal Act, which is the authority you must abide by, I refer you to Section 9 of this Act that states, a municipality has the capacity, rights, powers, and privileges of a natural person for the purpose of exercising its authority under this or any other act. In Black's Law Dictionary, a natural person is defined as a human being, naturally born, versus a generated juridical person, meaning an organization recognized by law, such as a corporation or a government agency. So in other words, that means I can't tell you what to do on municipally owned property any more than you can tell me what to do. Bylaws. Now I'm reading from the legislation. I'm not making any of this up. A lower tier municipality is in Section 11 of the Municipal Act. Subsection 2, a lower tier municipality and an upper tier municipality may pass bylaws subject to the rules set out in subsection 4, respecting the following matters. There are 6 items, but the one that refers to private lands, buildings, and structures that you refer to in this draft bylaw is this. Quote, public assets of the municipality acquired for the purpose of exercising its authority under this or any other act. So you have to acquire this property, and to acquire it, public assets, you have to do it through purchase, lease agreement, or expropriation. Public assets are property that belongs to the municipality or under the control or management of it. Under Ontario Regulation 599/06, it defines municipal property asset means an asset of the municipality that is land, equipment, or other goods. I'm getting dry, sorry about that. So the Municipal Act is the authority that you must comply to when creating a bylaw, because you only have the powers of a natural person to enforce and exercise your authority on property belonging to the municipal corporation. With respect to my property in Whitewater Township, I have never entered into any agreement that gives you the authority to regulate my land or my buildings and structures, nor will I give you consent to regulate my land, buildings, or structures. What you're proposing in this draft comprehensive zoning bylaw is what is defined as expropriation. Is it your intention to expropriate and compensate the owners of all private land, properties, and business entities in this municipality so that when you have them, you have the authority to regulate these lands within the municipality as per what you state in the application of this bylaw? It would seem further that with section 3.30 in your bylaw for public uses of lands, you state The provision of this bylaw shall not apply to the use of any land or to the erection or use of any building or structure for the purpose of public service by the municipality, the County of Renfrew, or any local board thereof defined by the Municipal Affairs Act. So, and telephone, gas, or companies, or department or agent of the Government of Ontario, Canada, including Ontario provided. So it goes on to say that. So in other words, you're proposing to regulate all lands, buildings, and structures within this municipality with the exception of those belonging. Oh, thanks. Thank you. So you're proposing to regulate all lands, buildings, and structures within this municipality with the exception of those belonging to the municipality. Perhaps you should be aware there are 2 cases under the Supreme Court of Canada where municipalities attempted to enforce regulation and control over private land without the consent of the property owners. They tried to expropriate without compensation, and in both these court cases, the municipalities lost. Also, for your information, the Ontario landowners were approached to be interveners in these cases and were approved by the Supreme Court of Canada based on our research and information in understanding property rights and the legislation that applies to it. And for your information, those cases are Annapolis versus the City of Halifax, Nova Scotia, and the other one is Lynch versus St. John's, Newfoundland. So in this draft bylaw, you refer to Section 26 of the Planning Act, that this act requires the zoning bylaw of the Township of Greater Madawaska, I'm assuming you mean the Township of Whitewater Township, be amended to conform to the official plan of the County of Renfrew. However, Section 29, or 26, subsection 9 of the Planning Act states, no later than 3 years after a revision under subsection 1 or 8 comes into effect, the council of the municipality shall amend all zoning bylaws that are in effect in the municipality to ensure that they conform with the official plan. It says nothing about the present zoning bylaw having to be repealed, or does it say an entire new zoning bylaw should be written, particularly when it has a lot of arbitrary stuff in it. Therefore, it would seem, in my opinion, that you need to create a new official plan. In this bylaw, you refer to County Official Plan Amendment 25, approved by the province in March 2020. In the approved official plan, under zoning, it states the local zoning bylaw will be the primary means of implementing the policies of this plan. Then you have an amendment in Amendment 35 of the County Official Plan that's been adopted by the council, but not approved yet by the province, where you've added this addition: an approval authority may by bylaw delegate the authority to pass a bylaw which is minor in nature to a committee of council or an individual who is an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality. As you, an official plan is just that. It's a policy which is not law, according to the courts. Therefore, it should have no impact on the residents. A bylaw is regulation according to the Interpretations Act and the courts. Therefore, it does affect the lives and the prosperity of the residents, enter either for better or worse. As you can see, this proposed draft zoning bylaw is not conforming to the county official plan to implement the guidelines or the policies. It is a direct major impact against private property owners and the private business entities, and definitely is not minor in nature. As municipalities are subject to the Interpretations Act, it also states preamble. The preamble of an enactment shall be read as part of the enactment intended to assist in explaining its purpose and object. This draft bylaw does not have a preamble. How can you expect the members of the public to understand the purpose of this proposed bylaw of regulation if you don't explain it in a preamble? This draft bylaw, as you say, must conform to the county official plan, and it must be consistent with the provincial policy statement. There is a preamble in the provincial policy statement. The first line of it states, The provincial policy statement provides policy direction on matters of provincial interest related to land use planning and development. So after reading this provincial policy statement, it further goes into say legislative authority. The following, quote, "The provincial policy statement is issued under the authority of the Section 3 of the Planning Act and came into effect on May 1st, 2020. In respect of the exercise of any authority that affects the planning matters, Section 3 of the Planning Act requires the decisions affecting planning matters shall be consistent with policy statements issued under this Act." Therefore, going back to the matters of provincial interest, I refer you to Section 2 of the Planning Act that defines provincial interest. I can read them all to you now, or you can look it up yourself, and you will see that matters of provincial interest do not include private lands, residential properties, or private entities. It all has to do with services provided for public use. So I'll close with this. As stated by this court in Toronto City versus Goldlist Properties, it is important to bear in mind that the purpose of an official plan is to set out a framework of goals, objectives, and policies to shape and discipline specific operative planning decisions. An official plan rises above the level of detailed regulation and establishes the broad principles that are to govern the municipality's land use planning generally. And also, as explained by Jay Saunders and Valhimmel Investments Limited versus the City of Mississauga, it states, official plans are not statutes. Like I said earlier, they're just a guideline and should not be construed as such. In growing municipalities, official plans set out the present policy of the community concerning its future physical, social, and economic development. Further, the proper interpretation of official plan is not a factual matter to be decided based on the opinion evidence from planners, but rather a question of law. And that is out of the Romlek Enterprises with Toronto versus the Ontario, another court case. So basically what I'm saying is you have to refer to the legislative authority before you approve these bylaws. And you have to understand that these bylaws are only imposed on property belonging or under the control of municipalities. They are not enforceable on private properties unless you get that owner's consent or there's been some kind of an agreement. So, in my opinion, this comprehensive zoning bylaw is drafted up, and it looks to me to be something where you could be looking at expropriation, where you're attempting to expropriate all properties within this township without the consent of the property owners. And I think you better seriously think what you're doing before you consider passing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Burns. I'll just make sure that I appreciate the time you've taken tonight to provide these comments. And I've noted, thank goodness we have it recorded.
Well, I will gladly give you copies of this so you have these sections that I'm referring to.
That's perfect. And that'll enable staff to note your comments to consider before we make any decisions on this matter.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? Or any comments from staff? Good. Thank you. Is there any other members of the public that wish to make comment? Yes, recognized right here. If you can just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Lori Briscoe. I live in Cobden. And I have a couple of comments and a question. Earlier, it was mentioned that we amalgamated the 4 different townships 20-plus years ago. It surprises me that in that amalgamation process, that these bylaws that you were... Sorry?
We may have to help with the elevator, please. So sorry. No, this is necessary. Thank you. Please carry on.
the bylaws that you're saying differ from one region to the other. I'm surprised that they weren't dealt with back during the amalgamation process. To me, that sounds like the job wasn't done back then, and now we're, I don't know, for whatever reason, we've made it this far, 20-plus years, and now all of a sudden we need to have all these new bylaws implemented because we're Whitewater Region. Well, we've been Whitewater Region for over 20 years. I don't recall getting a draft of these new bylaw guidelines, or what, not guidelines, but what you're proposing in the mail, and I would think that that's Whitewater Region's onus is on you guys to provide that to the people so that we know what these bylaws, these new bylaws are going to be, for starters, and how it's going to affect us. So my question is, I did hear somebody, I think Mrs. Burns, saying that it's on the website. Is there also a hard copy of that? Because not everybody can get on the internet, and it's not always easy to read a document, especially if it's like 190-some pages, as she said. I think you should be providing that. I don't know whether we really require 190-some pages, but even if we had a draft of what we're looking at, like we're here at this meeting, we don't really know exactly how it's going to affect us. We haven't really been told what that looks like. And I'd appreciate it if I could have a copy, if other people could have a copy, if it would be made available to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Maybe if...
One other thing. I think the amalgamation, all it did is cost the residents here money. Everything has increased. Our taxes, our water, it's ridiculous. Even this building itself. This used to be a beautiful hall that we used to be able to rent out and bring revenue into the town. And it's all chopped up now into this little wee building that we can't even fit in for a town hall meeting. It's disgusting, really. And I don't know, to me, I almost think we should go back to Cobden being Cobden, Beachburg being Beachburg, and so on.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your comments. We have your noted. So is it possible, CAO, do you want to make a comment on hard copies?
Yeah, we could certainly make, if you want to connect with our planner, Alex, so and then we could, I'll get you Alex's business card if you will, but if you want to connect with Alex, we can make a hard copy available here at the office. Certainly, we could also send you a link to get it on the website. What I would encourage residents to do is that if you want to inquire about your property, you're welcome to connect with our planner to find out how this zoning bylaw may affect your property. In fact, in most cases, I would say it probably doesn't. If you were previously zoned residential, you're probably in the same zoning, most likely in the same zoning. It's really a consolidation of the previous bylaws. So, you know, I started here in the township back in 2019. I think I was maybe the first planner, land use planner, that was hired by the township, certainly since amalgamation. So, yeah, I think in 2019, council realized that we need to deal with these planning matters with a more fulsome look at it. And for that reason, they hired a professional planner to do so. So certainly, Alex, if we can get some business cards available to the residents, then they can connect with you to get copies, and we can make copies available at the front counter to be viewed by the residents. Thanks.
Thank you, CAO. There was another member who had intended. Yes, please, if you could come up to the mic and introduce yourself, and the floor will be yours.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Bob Shepard, and I'm here on behalf of my son who owns a piece of property on Purple Finch. I've already had communication with Alex. She's been very cooperative with the comments to me. It's a minor variance question, so a few years ago my son got a minor variance to reduce the setback for the front yard. And because of various issues, he wasn't able to build his property down there. He's a student, he's gone out west, et cetera. So I reached out to Alex just to determine what the minor variance provisions were, and I heard tonight that there's going to be an extension of the 1 year for the minor variance. But I just wondered if the consultant could answer the question, because Ms. Benzie had sent me a copy of the draft of the amendment, and I understand the provision concerning the 1 year, but there's another provision that says that after the, I'm just reading it, what I received, maybe the consultant could help me, after the 1 year period in section 1.21.2 expires, minor variance is approved under the provisions of the applicable former zoning bylaw may be relied upon only if the zoning provision respecting the minor variance is the same or more permissive in this bylaw than the applicable former bylaw. So the minor variance, the setback in my son's situation was 7.5 in the current zoning bylaw. It's the same in the draft bylaw. So my question was, does that mean the minor variance carries over past the 1 year period?
That's a great question. Thank you. And I'm going to ask Kent, is that possible to respond to at this point in time, or would you like some time?
Well, I just need to get a clarification from the deputy. So the minor variance was to permit a setback of 7.5 meters?
No, it was, the setback was 7.5, and the minor variance reduced the setback from 7.5 meters to 3 meters for a front yard setback. So the existing zoning bylaw currently in place provides for 7.5 meter setback. We applied for a minor variance, got it reduced to 3 meters. The current proposed draft bylaw is the same, 7.5. So the way I'm reading the proposed amendment, unless I'm in error, that would mean that the prior one was 7.5, the current one's 7.5, so the minor variance would continue past the 1 year. That's the way I'm reading it. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think I think it means that if there's a new provision that is it defaults to that. But I could check into that for you and just double check to see if that would be the case.
Okay.
Perfect. So we'll mark that down as something we'll hold back up.
So the question, if I could, Your Worship, is that if in fact the 1 year is applicable, then if we applied for a building permit, for example, this July, I could rely upon the minor variance we obtained on the prior zoning bylaw, and then have a further year to build my house. Is that sort of what I'm looking at? If we apply for a building permit in July of this year, within the 1 year.
And I want to make sure that we provide you the proper guidance,
Okay.
and not just in the form of the meeting, but maybe the CEO can offer a comment right now.
I can wait if you want to.
Yeah, I would just because it's very site specific and there's the language part of it, I would encourage Mr. Shepherd to connect with Planner Benzie or myself. I know that Planner Benzie did discuss this matter with me, this specific item, and we did discuss it at length. So if we could just connect after the meeting and make sure that we clarify that you understand what the change, how it impacts yourself.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. And I'm sure your son appreciates you taking the time tonight to come out and ask that question on his behalf. So thank you so much. Good. Is there any other members of the public that would like to make comment? And I'll recognize over here. Again, if you can just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Desmond Lockhart. I own a business. It's called Ontario Retreats. We specialize in family vacation rentals and cottage rentals in Renfrew County. I'm also representing the OCRMA, which is the Ontario Cottage Rental Management Association, which manages thousands of cottages in Ontario. And we are all TICO registered, which is the Travel Industry of Council of Ontario, which is pretty much if you're going to manage someone else's cottage, you have to either be a travel agent or a real estate agent. And what I'm addressing today is in the definition of short-term rental and how it specifically says it has to be your principal residence only. I believe that's what it means. And we're very much opposed to that, as most cottage rentals are secondary residences. The owner usually lives in the city as their primary residence, and then they have a secondary residence, their vacation home, that they rent out to families for a few weeks in the summer in order to help pay their mortgage and give other people the cottage experience. We've been at this a long time. My business is 10 years old, and long before the term short-term rental was even a thing, before Airbnb was a thing, we've been renting cottages and vacation rentals. And we're not opposed to regulation. Our rental agreements to our owners are very, very precise. We don't allow parties, we don't allow fireworks, we have noise, you have noise monitors, we have security cameras, we lower occupancy, and we only rent to families. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lockhart. Do we want to talk to that point at this point in time? Oh, I see Kent's hand. So Kent, if you could please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think there might be some confusion about the principal aspect, what we're referring to in that the principal dwelling unit. So the provisions don't require to be some of the personal evidence. So that's how the provisions worded. So I think that the deputy would probably be happy to hear that.
Perfect, thank you. And our planner?
I just will make one note, Kent, for us as a takeaway too. I think he is specifically referring to the definition, not the provisions, and the definition, that there might be a little bit of inconsistency there. So that'll be something that we review and make sure that the definition matches the provision. Because I believe for now, it is not our intent to just limit it to the principal residence. That's a more fulsome conversation when we talk about the licensing bylaw, but I think certainly in this zoning bylaw, it should absolutely be consistent. So we'll take that away and clear that up. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, staff. Is there any questions from council? No, Mr. Lockhart, good catch. Thank you. Good. Next, is there another member of the public? Yes, sir. Same routine. If you can introduce yourself, please, and the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Albert Krashinsky. I'm Vice President of the Renfrew County Private Landowners Association, a different organization than Mrs. Burns. However, we work together. Now, under Section 11, subsection 2, Part 4 of the Municipal Act, it states, a lower-tier municipality and an upper-tier municipality may pass bylaws subject to the rules set out in subsection 4 respecting the following matters. And subsection 4 says, the public assets of the municipality acquired for the purpose of exercising its authority under this or any other act. Private property is not a public asset. If a municipality acquires it, they can only acquire it through purchase, lease agreement, or expropriation. Once it is acquired, then they can exercise their authority in the form of a bylaw or whatever under the authority of the Municipal Act or any other act, Planning Act. Keep in mind, the municipal township is a service corporation whose purpose is to provide services to the people. The official plan is what municipalities must create to improve infrastructure that will better serve the public. An example is, it could mean upgrading a water treatment plant or bringing in a transit system or building a new subdivision that will require water and sewer services for the public use. Official plans do not include private property. The property owners are the investors or shareholders that initially had signed a letters patent with the province when it was first created. As the investors or shareholders, you, the people, approve or disapprove whatever the municipality may propose that has to do with the operation of the municipal corporation, township. Your municipal councillors are the board of directors that you elected to protect your interests. That is why, under the Planning Act, they are required to hold a public meeting to get the approval of the public or any new or amended change they wish to make that has to do with the operation of the municipal corporation. Now, I've been wondering, there's 17 municipalities in Renfrew County. We are totally different from Toronto, just like night is today. What would happen if all the municipalities would stand together and challenge Toronto? One old seasoned warrior, he's dead now, councillor, immediately took me up and said, we'll end up in jail. Well, we wouldn't end up in jail. There's not enough jails to accommodate everybody. We've got to stand up pretty soon, because the United States is going down, and when the States goes down, Canada goes down. So we have to stand up. Now, I'm sure that all you people own private property. You should realize that when we fight for private property rights, if we lose them, you lose them also, every one of you. We've got to stand up. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come and provide us that information. If you want to provide the written copy of your comments to the planner, that'd be appreciated, and if not, I'm sure we'll be able to get most of it off the video. Excellent. Is there another member of the public that would like to make comment on this proposed bylaw? Yes, sir. If you want to come to the mic, please, and introduce yourself.
My name is Mark Briscoe, resident of Cobden.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Mark Briscoe.
Briscoe.
Resident of Cobden. The last time I was here at a meeting, they were proposed to take 300 feet of my land and make it commercial. We all got together and just decided not to do that. I still haven't got an official written notice of what was going on. I've heard that you're not doing it, but nothing in writing that you're not doing that, or what is the official plan that changed. That's all. I'd like to have that in writing. And it'd be nice if I had some notices of when the next meeting for this was to take place. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you taking the time to make those comments. Planner Benzie, if I can ask you to follow up with the individual after the meeting's done. I think he's talking about the OPA from the previous public meeting. Good. And public notice, it does come out. It should be, it's circulated. CAO, can you articulate how notice is articulated for public meetings or even our agenda?
Yeah, so with respect to the comprehensive zoning bylaw, we've been publishing the notices in the local newspapers that are published for free and delivered to homes. So for example, the Pembroke Observer, we have, and the Renfrew Mercury and the Eganville Leader, also through our social media feeds, through Facebook and our website. And we've also published in some instances through The Current, our local newsletter that gets issued to all property owners and the houses. So maybe just to respond to Mr. Briscoe, so the official plan amendment was adopted and your lands were excluded from being changed. But we'll follow up with you with some written correspondence. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Perfect. Oh, Mrs. Burns,
I just wanted to ask one question.
I'm going to make sure I entertain all other public
Okay,
before I come
that's
back for a
fine.
second one. Good. And sir, I saw your hand up. Yes, please. Yeah.
Why don't you just email everybody and says the meeting is such and such a time?
Yes, so I understand you're not going to come to the mic, but the comment from the member of the public was asking how we could email everyone. Yeah. I believe there's a function that you can sign up on our website to receive email updates of all agendas and any notices that are issued by the I know I receive one personally from our family perspective.
That's all the problem.
So just before I let Mrs. Burns come back to the mic, is there any other members of the public that would like to make a comment to this bylaw? Yes, ma'am.
So, sorry, my name is Martina Devine. I live in Ross Township, Whitewater. So you're saying you're advertising through newspapers? There are no longer any newspapers as of a month ago, so nobody's getting anything in their mailbox that way. So you can't say you're putting it through newspapers that don't exist unless Whitewater is putting out a newspaper and sending that. Nothing came in our taxes. I did not see anything because I read through the paperwork that came with our last taxes, of the notices of what's changing or not changing. So other than an email, which it should be some kind of paper, something, some notice board, something, because the newspaper doesn't work and there was nothing in our taxes. So you have to think of some other way to reach the public. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it is a sad reminder that we did lose another newspaper in our community recently, and staff will put that back on you. We're going to have to look at other ways to make sure that that information is provided to the public. Excellent, thank you. Is there any other members of the public that wish to make comment before I allow Mrs. Burns a second question? Good, so our final question for the night, Mrs. Burns, up to you.
One question. Is there a particular reason why you can't hold these public meetings, say at 7 o'clock at night, and in a facility where it can accommodate more people?
Thank you, and it is a point that we've discussed and we're going to look at for going forward. So thank you so much. Good. Yeah, of course. I won't turn away anybody. Please come up to the mic and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ray Stanley. I'm really interested in municipal politics. I'm not from here, but I keep thinking how we're so individualistic and we're only seemingly often, myself included, how does this going to affect my life? So what about my minor variance and how's that going to affect that? And so we do exception, and but I think we're failing to think of the overall, for all of us, how's it going to affect everyone, and standing together rather than, this is my, my special interest. Again, it's like cooperatives don't seem to work because people don't want to, give and take, but that's just what I'm seeing. And to be able to really look at the legality of it is the most important thing, rather than how's that going to affect my little piece of the pie. So, yeah, that's all, to think of the overall overarching principles that everyone is protected under. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that comment, Mrs. Stanley. Excellent. So lastly, I'd just like to thank everyone for their valued input this evening. Staff are going to now review and consider all the comments as part of the final drafting of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, which will be brought forward for future council consideration. I now call this public meeting adjourned at, my vision is 6:28 p.m. And council, we will take a short recess for bio break and allow those people that wish to leave an opportunity to leave, and then we'll recommence in 5 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back to the Township of Whitewater Region Regular Council meeting for Wednesday, October 18th. We're going to call ourselves back to order after a short recess at 6:36 p.m. And I know there are a few members standing. There are lots of seats available if you wish to come in and sit down at any time. Excellent. We'll move on with our agenda. The next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is the Mayor's Address, and I've prepared some comments for tonight. So I hope that everyone had a great Thanksgiving holiday, and now that we're starting to see some temperatures getting more and more fall-like, we're all anticipating that white stuff coming. But over the past 2 weeks, I'll share that I've attended 13 events and meetings on behalf of the council, and I want to highlight one of the more significant events that I attended, which was the Taste of the Valley that was hosted here in Cobden in conjunction with the Farmers Market, the Cobden Egg Society, this past Saturday. Incredibly, we had over 5,000 visitors and a huge number of vendors from across the Ottawa Valley and beyond. And a big thank you to our staff, specifically the leader of our motley crew, which was Debbie Reddy. We also had Al Griffin and his recreation team providing support on site, Alex Benzie, and of course the county staff. And of course, all of the other community volunteers, local vendors who provided so much more support. It was overall an outstanding event for Whitewater Region. In addition, at the same time, we also had our Fall Festival Day here in Cobden, where visiting our local businesses would get you a chance to win a $200 gift basket. And a huge thank you to the Cobden Rec Association for putting this on and for all the local businesses who participated. I hope that there was lots of overflow from the Taste of the Valley. And it was another great event to kick off our fall. Tonight, I also want to highlight 4 ongoing activities that are in the forefront of council and staff. So first is our comprehensive zoning bylaw review, which is almost complete, and you heard the public meeting just before. This effort will take the previously zoning bylaws of Cobden, Westmeath, Beachburg, and Ross and combine them into one single bylaw. We thank everyone for their input at our public meetings, our open houses, the meetings that I've had with individuals and developers alike, and all of the written submissions. This public engagement will make it a better bylaw for our community for years to come. Second is our budget for next year, 2024. At the last council meeting, we provided staff with some direction in order to prepare our budget proposal. We acknowledged as a group that there has been an increase in the cost of living, including an increase in the cost of providing municipal services. We also acknowledge that much of our infrastructure, like our buildings, roads, storm sewer systems, these need significant investments, and we do not have the savings set aside for these high-value projects at this time. So the question of how do we set funds aside for these investments and at the same time mitigate increases in operating costs is a tough one. And the budget proposal will work to try to address these competing needs. The third item is our water and wastewater systems. This expensive infrastructure has been some of the first major assets that we've had to invest in due to age, due to increased environmental standards, and in some cases the result of the Walkerton disaster. You will see a presentation later tonight that will help provide some background to better understand this project and some of the projects and the high rates for those that are connected to these systems. It will also provide some next steps of how we might move forward to mitigate these rates, or at least the ongoing increases that are projected to fund these very expensive systems. This will remain one of our efforts going forward. And the last point is just an update with respect to ice operations for those people that are very interested in hockey. There is ice operations currently underway in both Cobden and Beachburg arenas. Westmeath's ice plant was started this week with the intent that ice will be available before the end of October. Some good news on all fronts. Excellent. That concludes my address. We'll move on with Thank you. I'll just highlight for the members of the public that are here, the public comment section of our agenda is an opportunity for members of the public to offer oral or written comment to anything on the agenda that night to make sure that it's considered by council before it's presented. This evening, we have one speaker that is registered, and he would like to speak about the wastewater treatment plant here in Cobden. It's a Mr. Donald Deere. And Mr. Donald Deere, you're aware it's a 3-minute timing?
Yes, I am. I'm going to try and fit it in 3 minutes, but if I run to 10, is that okay?
No. I'm sure you're going to do your best. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Can you put it up on that screen there? Because this one here is for me, so I can read it. Okay. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thanks for letting me talk to you today. I was in attendance in the August 19, 2015 council meeting where Joe Janata of JP2G said that the preferred option for the wastewater treatment plant would be chosen after the public's input. I'm just absolutely amazed that he would say in the next sentence that the cost of whatever he's going to build, and he doesn't know what he's going to build, is $10,448,757. That's absolutely ridiculous to say something like that, because that's not even possible. Next slide, please. The consultant claimed it was a realistic cost estimate. He later stated they were realistic numbers, and he used realistic several times during his presentation. In a December 2015 preliminary Phase 1 and 2 report, that exact number is not shown for any of the options. Nowhere. All the options that are shown are Class D estimates and are order of magnitude, good for comparison purposes only. They're basically plus 25 or 30%, minus 10, I think is the number. Next slide, please. In the same report, the consultant stated that from 2010 to 2014, the current average wastewater treatment flow was 833 cubic meters per day. I understand that's not correct. It's been corrected in the final report. But in my opinion, it makes no sense to size a plant at 1,000 cubic meters today when the average daily flow is already above the 80% reporting limit. It makes no sense to do it at 1,000 cubic meters a day because you've got a water pump house that can put out 1,400 cubic meters a day almost. Why wouldn't you size your effluent treatment plant at least the same size as your pump house? Next slide, please. As required by the provincial policy statement of 2014, lot creation is allowed only if there is sufficient reserve sewage system capacity. And sufficient reserve sewage system capacity shall include treatment capacity for hauled sewage. Next slide. In both the above scenarios, they ignored the 80% reporting limit and the requirement to receive hauled sewage. As of September 30th, 2023, this plant is averaging 890 cubic meters per day for 2023, with 4 months above 900 cubic meters per day. In my opinion, you're going to be over the 80% limit, so you're going to have to abide by your ECA. What does this mean? Is the plant too small? In my opinion, yes, it is. Way too small. It should have been at least 1,500 cubic meters a day. In 10 to 15 years, if Cobden grows, you will likely need to spend several $1 million in upgrades, which is crazy. The people in Cobden can't afford it. I got involved because I didn't like the injustices being perpetrated on the people of Cobden. 5 years ago, I assisted a lawyer in Montreal in settling a claim of several $1 million similar to this situation, with the engineering consultant's insurer paying the claim. As per your contract, the consultant has liability insurance to cover situations such as this. In my opinion, what happened on this project is not the fault of the council or the abusers in Cobden. So why should they be asked to pay $9 million over 30 years because an engineering consultant gave incorrect information? The other thing I want to point out, when he gave that number of 10 million something, there was not one member of council or the mayor that questioned him about it. That he gave it out just like unbelievable. Anyway, They should not have to pay. Some may think this issue is in the past, but for the users in Cobden, it will be in the present for the next 28 years as they struggle financially to pay for this fiasco. In order to protect the citizens of Cobden and your constituents, I suggest that Whitewater needs to get a legal opinion about what's happened with this project. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deere, for making those comments. And I will ask.
I just wanted to give you the reason that Don did the speaking. He probably knows more than anyone in this room about the particulars of this situation. So it was very important that he give you the facts.
Perfect. Thank you, Mrs. Guest.
Did I just say something else?
Last exception.
Once I realized, when I was at that meeting on August 19th, 2015, I realized this project was going to be a disaster. It may be doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is nice, except that you're overflowing 12,800 cubic meters of garbage, raw sewage into Muskrat Lake, which the Muskrat Lake Association complained to the Ministry of Environment. Unfortunately, the Ministry of Environment doesn't care. That's the sad part about it. But when you get to the 80%, the Ministry of Environment will care.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Deere.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we acknowledge, was there any written comments received by the clerk prior to this?
No, there wasn't.
Excellent. So thank you, Mr. Deere. Excellent. So we will move on to the next item on our agenda, 9.1, which morphs perfectly from Mr. Deere's comments. This is a Whitewater Region Water and Wastewater Services presentation. And the recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive Manager Claroux's presentation concerning water and wastewater services. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Moore and seconded by Councillor Trim. And I will turn the floor over to Public Works Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so tonight we have a presentation. Hopefully it's not too long. Mrs. Nicholson and myself will be tag teaming this presentation, as is lengthy. So tonight we're talking about water and wastewater systems in the Township of Whitewater region. For the slides tonight, we're going to talk about water, wastewater systems, the upgrade to the Cobden wastewater plant, user fees, and then our next steps. So the township has 3 water systems, which is very unique in Renfrew County. We do have one in Beachburg, one in Cobden, one in Haley, and then we have a wastewater system in here in Cobden.
So I can speak to some of the regulatory things that make up our drinking water licenses that allow the township to run a drinking water system. So it's made up of a number of pieces, including a Drinking Water Works permit, which has been issued by the Ministry of Environment for our system. We have an operational plan under our DWQMS for our particular system. There's a requirement that the system is operated by an accredited authority, which our accredited authority is Aqua. That we have financial plans for the system that are required. So our most recent financial plan is from 2019. That we have a permit to take water. So there's permit to take waters for each of our plants, individual permit to take waters. And that the director themselves are satisfied that that the plants and the system is operated in accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. And that's done so through annual inspections by the ministry.
For the Beachburg drinking water system, the system has a water treatment plant that at 31 Robinson Drive. The source water is 2 groundwater wells, and the capacity, the rated capacity is 973. The distribution system has 458 users. In 2022, this graph shows each month the average daily flow and the maximum day. In 2022, for the Beachburg water plant, the average throughout the year was 38% of the rated capacity, and the maximum daily flow that was in July and August was 82%. This chart here shows the average over the 2015 to 2022 range, and generally the water usage is in a decline. Here in Cobden, the water plant, the rated capacity is 1364 cubic meters per day, and it's 455 users. The one difference between the Cobden drinking water system and the Beachburg that has a elevated storage tank. Similar to Beachburg, the average in 2022, the average daily flow was 43%, and the maximum day was 69%. The one difference between Beachburg and Cobden that the average, the annual output of the plant has pretty much it's flattened or has declined in 2022. The Haley drinking water system is a much smaller and different type of system than the other two water systems. This one, the system has the treatment plant has two groundwater wells, which is different than the Cobden one, which is the source water is Muskrat Lake. The plant and the distribution system was upgraded in 2008, 2009, and has 34 users. In 2022, the average daily flow was 13%, and the maximum day was 32%. Similar to Beachburg, that the flow has decreased or leveled out in the last couple of years. The Cobden Wastewater plant was recently upgraded with sewage directed into the new plant on October 5th, 2021. The rated capacity is 1,000 cubic meters per day, with a maximum daily flow of 3,500. And the system has one pumping station, and with 425 users.
So I just wanted to speak to the wastewater treatment plants, the monthly raw flows. So the MECP guidelines for sewage works defines the rated capacity of a sewage treatment plant in accordance with its ECA is defined as the average daily flow, which the sewage treatment works have been approved to handle. And that is calculated as the cumulative total sewage flow to the sewage works during a calendar year divided by the number of days that sewage was flowing. So essentially it's the total volume coming into the plant divided by 365 in this case. This is equivalent to the design average daily flows of,
1,000, yeah, and the big difference what Dana provided that to get the average daily flow, you need the entire calendar year, not just up to say September, for example. You need the entire calendar year.
So the point being that there are times that the periods that the flows might be higher than 1,000 or lower than 1,000, as long as over the course of the year it averages out below 1,000. So one thing to note is that staff have confirmed that the 6-year trending in the final version of our municipal, the EA that was done for this plant, there was a value that was corrected in 2014. So previously, in the first version of the EA, there was a higher number. The operating staff identified that there was an inconsistency, an incorrect number was reported, and it was fixed in the second version of the EA. So the trending that was used to calculate and set the limits that the plant was designed to were based on the corrected information that was included in the 2015 plant. So that was just one thing I just wanted to note that Mr. Deere had asked a question about previously to staff.
The old wastewater plant was originally built in 1979. Was in 1991, had a small upgrade changing the chemical system. The old plant had no redundancy. It had only one treatment system, and the rated capacity was 696, with the new one being 1,000. The maximum hydraulic capacity was 2280. And part of the actual EA that was done, it did look over the 6-year average from 2010 to 2015, and the percentage of the rated capacity ranged from 87% to 134%, and the 5 out of 6 years it was over the rated capacity. How the rated capacity was determined, it was projected using the 6-year average, which came to 753 cubic meters per day, with a projected growth of 300 people within the wastewater system. That translated to so that additional 300 people determined that it was 150 cubic meters extra that would be required, and that estimate came to 903 cubic meters per day, which the engineers provided the plant to be 1,000. So how the funding came about, in 2014, there was the funding SCF, which is the New Building Canada Fund Small Communities Fund. In 2014, the township submitted an expression of interest, which a final application was submitted in December 2014. The funding announcement was approved and announced to the municipality in June 22nd, 2015, which council passed bylaw 1508-810 in August 2019 of 2015. Speaking of the funding, the total funding was almost 6.3 million, with the province and the federal government providing 3.1 million. The one note that the big note that before the municipal EA was provided, which was done after the funding application. So the township provided a funding request of 6.2 million of a $9.4 million plant.
So I just wanted to go over some quick things about how a municipal class environmental assessment is undertaken. So essentially it's broken down into 5 pieces that take place to make sure that the plant that you ultimately design is designed correctly. So the first thing is to identify the problem or the opportunity to be solved. Here in this case, it was quality of water entering the lake, as well as the capacity issue where we were exceeding the rated capacity. The second one was to identify the different alternative solutions and select a preferred solution. So in this case, they identified, I believe it was 6 different options, all of varying different costs. They identified an alternative design and identify the alternative design concepts for the preferred solution and select that preferred design concept. And then the second is to prepare, the fourth phase is to prepare the environmental study, review it, and then the 5th phase is to go into detailed design and construct and undertake project management for the actual plant upgrades.
Yeah, for the timeline, staff and council time, the plant was rated capacity was over its rated capacity, and there was an issue. In December 2014, the plant went a kitchen assessment, and then additional in the same timeline, inflow and inflation study was done. In 2015, as I mentioned before, it was announced that the township was successful in the funding. in August 2015, JP2G was appointed the engineer of record for the plant upgrade. In September, the agreement with JP2G was also included for the project management of the plant. The EA process began in October 2015, with the first report for the EA for phase 1 and 2 was submitted in December 2015. There was a public information center in January 2016, and then the final EA phase 1 and 2 report was submitted in April 2016. A second information center was held in November 2016, and then which the final completion of the EA was March 1st, 2017. As Deanna mentioned before, it was any time through the EA process, anyone can request a bump up, that would be a Part 2 order that the township and the engineering firm would have to defend to continue with the actual design and the construction of it, which the Muscat Lake Association did request a Part 2 order in March 22nd, 2017. So this was the whole construction timeline and design. So the actual design started after the funding announcement, which was started in September 2015, with the preliminary design report in November 2016. As I mentioned before, the the preliminary design report was started in 2016. With the Part 2 order, no work could go ahead and actually be designed because which the association rescinded their order in March 2018. In the following May, which the tender was tendered for the project, and tenders closed on June 22nd. And council rewarded the actual project in August 2018. Construction started in October 8th, 2018, and with the intention of completion of the project in 2 years later in 2020. The plant was extended. The contract was extended to April 30th, 2020. And then the actual date of sewage that was injected into the plant was October 5th, 2021, with the plant getting substantial completion in March of 2022. The Part 2 order request, so the MLA provided the Part 2 request, which part of the consultation between JP2G and the township met with the MLA on a few occasions and actually toured a similar plant in Port Carling in September 2017. And then finally in 2018, the Muscat Lake Association rescinded the order, confirming that that the plant would reduce the potential bypass of the plant. And then which March 2018, the township received a letter from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change that the township could proceed with the project. Yeah.
Sure. So the municipal class EA looked at 6 different alternatives, and from with the lowest ranking being rank 7, which was the do nothing, which would limit growth, but had a 0 cost. And then some of the more key things that were looked at was reducing the extraneous flows, which is the infiltration into the collection system. And that had a low ranking because it had a cost of about $14 million, sorry. The third alternative was to upgrade the plant and add tertiary level treatment and sludge storage at a cost of $4.1 million. That was ranked as EA ranking of level 4. The alternative 4 was to upgrade the existing plant with a new parallel treatment unit, including tertiary treatment and sludge storage. And there was a 4A, which included the mechanical upgrades of $8.6 million, and the wastewater treatment plant lagoon option were at a cost of $7.9 million. So the EA ultimately recommended option 4A, which was upgrading the existing plant, constructing new mechanical treatment systems, including tertiary treatment and sludge storage, in conjunction with alternative 2, which was to look at reducing the extraneous flows to the wastewater treatment plant.
During the tendering phase, it did close on June 22nd, 2018, with 5 bids received, ranging from 10.8 million to almost 15.2. In July 4th, 2018, the council did award the plant to Baseline Contractors Inc. To the award of $10,980,000, not including HST. The Cobden upgrade financial. So the original contract. So the original contract was, I said, at 10.8 million. There was 187,000 in change orders. And with the EA design and the project management, the cost, our cost, which not included, which included the non-refundable HST, came just shy of $13 million. So $12,941,000. So what does this all mean to our rates? I guess $1 million question that the water users are asking. So the water category is broken down to 5 categories, which is five categories, and and additionally we have 3 metered units. With residential unit, for the entire 3 systems of water, has 892 units, and wastewater 387 units, and with small commercial, with water it's 50 and wastewater 36.5. Medium is 22 units and 14 for wastewater. High commercials 23 units of water and 10 units of wastewater, and multi-res construction is 113 units, and we have 3 units for metered. This is in the graphs is showing the breakdown of each factoring. So I stated the residential units is the majority at 80%, and also the revenue at just shy of $1 million out of the 1.2 million. Similar to the wastewater system, residential is the largest users of 73% of the units, and the revenue is the largest at $653,000. So some of the categories that was presented through Mrs. Guest's presentation. This was provided, that's broken down in the in 2017 and also in the financial plan and the rate study. So there is, I said before, there's a residential rate that's weighted at 1. Same as, and it's very same cost for the small commercial. With medium commercial, it's weighted at 1.5. So what does that mean? It's 1.5 times the small commercial rate, or and then with high commercial, it's rated at twice the rating factor. And then with multi-residential, it's 0.8 of the residential rate. And then the subcategories that it defines. So it will define a farm, home occupation, how are halls being billed, and then the miscellaneous, like for example, curling club, the schools, and and how vacancies are provided. So billing history was one that came up in Mrs. Guest's presentation. In 2019, the rate study that was prepared by Watson Associates recommended the township move from 3 separate rate areas. So each water system prior to this had each water system had its own rate. So it would be different if you lived in Haley, it would be different from Beachburg, and would be different from Cobden. And so during the budget deliberations of 2020, council and staff recommended that we move to a harmonized rate to combine all the water rates, which included the capital and operating. Additionally, in 2019, the tax billing and collection policy was updated to change the frequency of billing from quarterly to every other month. This was done to lower down the water and wastewater arrears. In 2019, the arrears that are over 180 days was 103,000. And currently, our current water and wastewater arrears is 34,000. So the big question is how that a water user would ask, what makes up the fee structure of 1,081? With the big shown here, the biggest part of the flat rate, the flat rate of a residential is 28% going to, that's being transferred into reserves. This is for future capital, which is the actual Beachburg water plant expansion, which I'll speak to. And then additionally, the Aqua salaries, which is 20%, so it's 28% of the flat rate structure. Some of the factors in here was chemicals and electricity and equipment and services. So services is heating and actually supplies for the actual plant. A lot of these are fixed costs that it wouldn't matter if Aqua was doing it or if the township ran it or another party ran the actual plant. So the same rate structure for the wastewater. The actual, if you note that there's actually no transfers in 2022 being provided to reserves, and the actual debenture, the actual debentures is 34% of the actual fee structure, and the Aqua salaries is 22%, which equals 3.5 full-time equivalent staff. The history for water and wastewater rate billing. So for the first couple of years between the rate study and what actually was presented, what was different for the actual rate study in 2021, it was 21% increase. 20% increase was the rate study, and what actually was 21%. In 2021, actual was 9%, and the actual rate study was 10. In 2022, the rate study recommended 10%, and only a 2% was increased. And then in 2023 this year, the rate study recommended 10%, and it was 9% increase that was actually presented. Wastewater, in 2020, it was equal at 20%. The big one in 2021, the rate study recommended, in 2021, the rate study recommended 60% rate for wastewater rates. What actually happened with 30%, which affected, which are showing in the next slides, which affected future rates. So in 2022 we matched it, but in actually 2023 the rate study recommended 4, and actually it was 12 to get back onto the rate study, the actual rate study recommendation. It's hard to see, but it's shown that in from previous to 2020, the actual rates were different. So as you've shown, so Haley's was quite high, and that was a direct cost of the plant and distribution system in that was done in 2009. And it's shown that in 2017 it was Cobden and Beachburg were different, and then it was the same in 2019, and then 2020 they were harmonized into one budget and one rate structure. And it's shown here between the rate study and what was actual. So the rate study actually shows a lot higher increase, where the water and what staff are providing the water modified to get back on track, which will in 2029 will be back on track how it was. For wastewater, which you can see a little better, so in just it's showing very similar to the previous graph. Sorry, in the darker orange, that's where the rate study was recommended, and we were what was actually presented was actually quite lower, and the plan is to get back on track in 2028 and 2029. The one question is how do we compare to our neighboring users? With how rates are provided in Whitewater region, we're a flat rate, which some of our neighboring municipalities are metered. To compare, it's very tricky to compare metered versus flat rate, because meter is based on use on consumption. So what staff did, we compared, which is it's probably low on the low side, but we used the Stats Canada average that was calculated for the average per person per day, with a family of 4. So that provided, so Whitewater region, the current rate for 2023, shown in the graph. There is some neighboring municipalities that are close, and some are very lower than ours, and actually some are actually higher than the municipality. Debentures. For water debentures, we have, so water debenture, we have, principal was $1.8 million in the end of the balance of 2023. There'll be remaining balance of $1.4 million. Some of the projects were Haley Cobden treatment plant upgrade, and also the Cobden plant upgrade, the Haley distribution. There's a project in Beachburg that was on the books in 2011, and then in Cobden there was a True Love John and Crawford project, which that was only a 20% debenture. It was a 1.6 million, but only 20% was to the water rates, which Some of the projects that will be coming. So in Beachburg, the Cameron, Earl, and Vera Crescent will add a payment. We'll add a payment. Sorry, of $64,000 in 2024, which is estimated. The actual payment for 2024 is $193,000. For wastewater, there's a sewer project that was added to the debenture in 2011, and then also the True Love John and Crawford. 5% of that project was towards the wastewater, and then the sewage plant was a $6 million debenture. And out of the $318,000 debenture payment, $304,000 is the actual plant. The plant was debentured for 30 years, which will be paid off in 2051.
So I can speak to a couple of current water projects that are occurring. So as mentioned, Beachburg has some capital project currently underway for plant renewal and optimization at a cost of about $2 million. We did receive funding from the federal government in the amount of $825,000, as well as from the province in the amount of $687,000 for a total cost to us of $550,000. That's correct? Yep. And so construction on that project is going to be beginning in March of 2024, and it will take about a year to complete, hopefully. And the township funded this portion of our work through our water reserves. So there's a number of future projects that council may be considering and could be considering. So Cobden, a wastewater treatment plant membrane replacement. That's something that will be coming forward to council in the next a little bit here. So the cost is estimated at about $880,000 with a timeline in 2029 through 2032. Now this, the membrane replacement for the wastewater treatment plant was not included in the 2019 financial plan. That's potentially a big money number that isn't included in the existing rates. The Cobden water treatment plant filter number 1 replacement or upgrade is something that will be coming forward rather soon as well. There's been preliminary estimates for a refurb of the plant at about $500,000 and or a complete replacement of around 1.9. Currently, we're proposing engineering for this project in 2024, and that will help to determine what the appropriate pathway will be regarding either replacement or upgrade. Crawford Street is on the list with a total cost of $1.42 million, and the portion of that to water will be $210,000. Hume Street at a cost of $650,000, again the water portion of $250,000. Simpson Street as well at a cost of $715,000 with a $280,000 portion of that. A key thing in our plan that staff are looking at is a master servicing plan at a total cost of $300,000, and that would be split between water and then the sanitary portion at $80,000. And this is a key planning document that we'll use to plan for all of the system in the long term to make sure that we're meeting our requirements and keeping our system operating. Another item here, potentially a big ticket one, is the Beachburg water tower at a potential cost of $4 million. The financial plan in 2019 estimated at $1.7 million. And lastly is the financial plan rate study at a cost of about $50,000. This is a key piece that we are required to do as part of our municipal drinking water license renewal in early 2025, so likely to be undertaken in 2024, and that's to be funded by development charge.
Yeah, and one of the master servicing plan will help. We will determine it will be a model of the one task of the master servicing plan will model the actual the water main, like the water system, and it'll determine if a tower is required, and if it is required, where. So that'd be one task that we would do first before even proposing a water tower. Just to note that the financial plan did include a cost to refurb the filter 1 replacement in Cobden at $61,000. If you recall, Aqua did tenders out, and it came in at I think it was 523,000. At the time, staff recommended not to proceed, but to actually come back to investigate other options. Some of the reserves that we have reserved. So the sewage system debenture fund, we have 26,000. And the number was as of December 31st, 2022. So the water reserve is 334,000, and we're adding 274,000, which will be direct relation to the Beachburg water plant upgrade. So that project will not be debentured. Staff are recommending using reserves for that. Additional so the water reserve, is 352,000. Sorry, the previous one was the actual sewer upgrade was 334,000. My apologies. Then newly introduced was development charges. So we've been collecting development charges, which we have 15,000 for water reserve and 12,000 for wastewater. These projects would be for new projects or for projects that would be caused by development. Then I'll pass it to Deanna about the actual good news of the actual water treatment plant.
So one of the key reasons why the wastewater treatment plant was upgraded was because the quality of effluent exiting the plant wasn't meeting provincial water quality guidelines standards. So this graph shows pretty nicely that the red bar is where the new plant came online. And you can see it's a very steep drop off to where we're virtually at zero for almost all parameters that are coming out of the plant. The plant is operating extraordinarily well. It's treating and discharging very high quality water. So a key one here that is something that was considered in the EA was the impact of E. coli coming out of the plant. So previous to the old plant, you can see you would often get fairly high spikes. And the new plant, every sample has been basically less than 2 or non-detect, which is great. It means the plant is doing its job as we hoped it would. The next piece is the loading of phosphorus going into the lake. That was one of the key pieces. That's one of the key things that we look at on how the nutrient loading in the lake. And again, the new plant, you can see that it's virtually at zero now, operating all throughout the year, and that's a great news story for the plant. It means less nutrients going in, and should help with the quality of the lake.
Yep, so for the next step, I'm not sure if the CIO want to take this one or I can. Just on next steps. So one of the items that we recommend from staff for council to consider to insurance letters from the ministry from AMO. Association of Municipalities of Ontario and Roma, outlining the actual challenges of the water and wastewater rates for the township, and we request a joint meeting with Sharon Gallant, MP of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, and John Yakubuski, MPP of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, and the warden, in relation to the affordability challenges rating of the water and wastewater rates, and also direct staff to provide a report on options to find efficiencies and revenue generation. For example, water meters, so it would separate the commercial versus residential, and then septic treatment, and also funding models. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. That is a big report. And I know, I don't know if the members of the public, if they are seeking paper copies of this, is that also accessible at the front desk?
Yeah, we can certainly make a paper copy available at the front desk, and I think we'll post the presentation directly on our website under the section for water and wastewater.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much for preparing that. And I'm going to open the floor to council members and just before we start, I'll just recognize that Councillor Bell has rejoined us, so he is online as well. If I can get him put in front here, please. And I'll go to the mover first, which is Councillor Moore. Any questions or comments?
I do. Thank you very much for this report. It's nice to actually see it on paper, and now this will be a living document for us sitting around the table. And at this time, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I guess the clerk, I'd like to make a motion that council consider in the following areas for implementation as next steps.
Perfect. So you'd like to make a motion?
Yes, I would, please.
To basically take into effect the next steps outlined on that slide?
Yes, however the clerk would like to word that.
Clerk?
Yes, we do have prepared, just in case this did come up, the resolutions, basically the next steps as provided in Manager Claroux's report, so it's certainly here on the table for council's consideration should they choose to proceed.
Thank you, Clerk. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Trim recognizes the seconder. And is there debate, discussion on that motion being put forward, or comments? I'll go back to Councillor Moore. You put the motion forward.
We have promised our constituents that we would follow up on this, so we can't let this get away from us. We have to keep on top of this, and I think with this motion, this will keep it active, and I really don't want things to be forgotten. We have to prepare for our meeting in January with Roma, Roma, and whoever else we can talk to in the meantime, whether it be Shell Grant's office, etc., John Yakubuski. So we have to move forward on this. We can't sit.
Councillor Trim, do you have any comments as the seconder? None? Is there any other comments? I'm looking. Okay, I'm going to just add some comments to the discussion just based on this. And I apologize, I have to look to the side. So I have discussed already with our AMO and Roma reps. Now, for those people that might be listening or present, what's AMO and Roma? AMO is the association of 444 or 443 municipalities across Ontario that get together and lobby the government for issues like this. So the request to them would be to say there's got to be other municipalities in our situation, like Bancroft, like Barry's Bay, Madawaska Valley, that this is hurting. This affordability thing is going to become a crisis as more and more organizations have to replace equipment like we've had to. So we would be requesting AMO to lobby on our behalf in conjunction with other municipalities. Now, Roma is a smaller subset of that, of AMO. It's essentially only the rural municipalities. So we cut out all the big cities, we cut out all the urban municipalities, and this is a vital ground for us to be able to say living in Ontario, rural Ontario is becoming unaffordable. This is an area that the province needs to step up and start to be able to help our residents. So both of those organizations, we have regional reps. I've spoken to both regional reps. They're prepared to respond to our request if it's subsequently approved through this motion. And for the second item, we've already touched base with both our MP and our MPP on this item, as well as the warden. And all three are willing and want to come and meet. And this background presentation has been provided by staff. And again, if this motion is agreed to by council, that'll be used to lobby both the MP and the MPP to get us access to those ministers at the federal and provincial level and directly lobby for our situation here in Whitewater region. And the last item is really about doing all the other things in between, not just waiting for someone to come and rescue us. What are we going to do ourselves? How can we cut this nut? Every percent that we can save, I can't remember the number, I think it's $50 a year off a resident. So that effort we have to work to make. So that third item would give us internally to explore options to try to find those savings that we can take and grab onto. So those are my comments. Does that solicit any other feedback from members of council? Yeah, Councillor Trim.
Just wondering, we get to see hopefully we'll get an audience, a delegation with the provincial ministers responsible, and hopefully Mr. Yakubuski will join us. We don't have a sort of a venue to meet with the federal minister, and so how could that happen?
That would be done direct. So in both cases, for item 1 and 2 under item 2, it's essentially going and meeting them in their office in Ottawa and in Toronto, booking time with them. The MPP's there to escort us in and help us with that discussion. Now that's on top of a Roma delegation where we'd have that opportunity to also speak again. Good. Any other questions or comments on that? Good. CAO, did you want to add anything at this point? I
would only add that, like, as we progress into the budget for next year, I mean, certainly the impact of any increases will be felt by our users. So, you know, staff are cognizant that if there's a way to, if there's a mechanism by which we could lessen the percentage increase, and that would be for us to reevaluate the wastewater and water rate study to find opportunities to lessen that increase. I think we're going to present that to council. So we're working at that, actively working at that. So it's not going to wait for another report. When we move forward with the budget in November 1st with council, we'll be trying to find items that we could present to council to reduce that impact to residents. So without a doubt, I mean, this is my #1 priority, I would say, to members of council, and we got to find ways to reduce these costs for sure. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, CAO. Any other comments? Then I'm going to call for a vote on the motion that's on the table, not the receive motion, but the one proposed by Councillor Moore. Excellent. All in favor? And it's carried. Good. So we will go back to the original motion, which is just to receive the presentation that was provided by Public Works Manager. Is there any questions or comments from members of council on any aspect of that presentation? Yes, Councillor Tabbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, on the report, you were talking about various projects, and it said there were, like, water would pay for part of it. So I'm assuming that the rest of the taxpayers would pay. There we go. Yep, go. Yeah. So on Simpson Street, for example, you have a total cost, and then you have wastewater. Why is there no portion for water? Hume Street, I don't think, has wastewater. Crawford Street is just water, but no wastewater. So are we not doing everything at once so that we don't have to go back and do it later?
Yeah, so for the project for Simpson Street, it is shovel ready. It's been designed, and it's only been identified the actual wastewater, the sanitary system, the wastewater system that needs replacement, and not actually the water. And then there is the other portion of that is taxation. So taxation would cover the actual storm sewers and the actual road itself or any sidewalks.
And sorry, I'm just going to amplify because there may be many listeners here. So when the Public Works Manager speaks to taxation, that's the general levy. That's funds coming out of all of the money that we collect. But water and wastewater, as can be seen as we go through this slide, it's mandated by the province. The users connected to the system have to carry the costs associated with that system. So it's unique to water and wastewater versus the other municipal services that we provide can be funded out of general taxation. And I'm just going to make sure the treasurer concurs with my summation. Good, he's nodding. Good, back to Councillor Tavert.
Okay, so we will not come back in another year then, or whatever, and have to do water project on Simpson Street. That's my fear here is we keep saying that the water systems are old, but we're not replacing them at the same time. So we're okay with that then?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. My other thing is it's sort of a bee in my bonnet. In the last slides, I think it was, you were talking about the E. coli counts and things like that. Yes. I have a question. Do we know about bypasses in the old water plant versus the new water plant? Have there been any bypasses with our new water plant?
Yes, and I'll pass it off to Deanna. Yeah, go ahead.
So I apologize, I don't have the exact number of bypasses that occurred during each previous year. I can speak to the E. coli numbers and that they were, so E. coli coming out of the plant was previously high and it has dropped off. I can speak to bypasses that have occurred in 2023. So there was a fairly significant, there was 2 storm events that resulted in bypasses to the plant. And the flows entering the plant were fairly significant, and we did see bypasses occurring during 2 occasions. So yes, they have occurred with the new plant. So the intention of the upgrade is to limit as many bypasses as possible, as feasible, but it's never going to completely capture every single bypass. That being said, so the plant expansion itself, it was helpful to help with the treatment, but there is still potentially work to be done on the infiltration side. So those storms capturing not just sanitary flows, but stormwater flows. And well, if we can eliminate that flow, then you lessen the chance as well of there being a bypass. So you can build the plant bigger to capture so much, but at some point you don't want to go too big and overdo it, because for the rest of the year you're not using that capacity. So it's finding that balance between making your plant correctly sized and then also focusing on the infiltration aspect of it. So that was as I mentioned in the EA process, they identified upgrading the plant, but as well they included that piece, that number 2 piece, that included looking at reducing infiltration flows, because that is where you can take that big spring bypass, when you're most likely to get a bypass, take that out of the picture, if that's clear.
I'm just going to pause you for a second. Do you have another question?
Another question, Mr. Coleman.
Sure, shoot.
Okay. So I have to admit, your explanation has been the best one I've ever received as a reporter and as our counselor now, because I was always told that it would stop it, but it would lessen the bypasses, but there will always be bypasses then.
So so the plant was rated so at like a maximum day of 3,500. So you can always build bigger, right? So we could have built one, with a maximum day there of 5,000 or 10,000, for example. But the cost would be for to build it would be a lot higher. And then that's what part of the EA study looked at. They looked at a 6-year period and what was the highest flows coming in. And that was looked at and determined that 3,500 would be like the maximum day. But for example, Dan, do you have the numbers of?
I'm gonna just pause you for a second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
I'm gonna pause you.
It was good.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
According to so those people that are watching or present here today, our procedural bylaw mandates that the council meetings can last as long as 3 hours. And after 3 hours, I need council's permission in order to continue the meeting for up to another 30 minutes. Okay, or we could agree to even go longer with 2/3 of the members in agreement. So what I need is a motion from the floor, either asking for an extension until we're done or an extension of 30 minutes. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I would recommend that we continue until we are finished. I think we're coming to an end, so I would like to see this finished this evening.
Good. And a
If I have
seconder for
anything.
that motion. I see Councillor Tabbert as a seconder. And just to clarify before we call for a vote, there's no debate on that, and it does require 2/3.
Yeah, and we have Councillor now in presence, so we have 6, so 2/3 is 4
4.
members.
Good. So I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Good. It's passed. Thank you. Good. Do we need to answer that final question, or you're good?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to state that, so the plant rate maximum average, like maximum day was built for 3,500. Prior to that, the actual EA design was under 3,500, but in 2023, we had two major events. If you recall, we had like a few days, I think it was back in, was it May or April, Deanna? Which the maximum one day hit 6,400.
And previous to that, the maximum we'd ever seen was 32. So it was, the event was more than double that had ever been seen and tracked by the plant before. So it was a very large event.
Thank you. And I think we need to work to be able to communicate that more effectively. I didn't know it was double any previous event flow, or I didn't register it if you guys did tell us. So thank you. Is there any other questions or comments on the presentation? I'm going to recognize Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick question. Talked about the other day on the tour, just the presentation there for the membrane replacement cost of $880,000. So obviously we're looking at a timeline for 2029, 2032. For that membrane replacement, the investment now is $880,000, but that could probably be expected to go up fairly significantly throughout that timeline. I would assume, I guess that would be my first question: is there an anticipated increase to that membrane replacement cost for which we're probably going to have to replace two? My other question would be, do we have a plan in place to accommodate for those replacements moving forward? And because obviously if it's happening for 10 years, that's going to be an ongoing procedure for the life of the plan. So just wondering if someone could speak to looking forward and how we might be able to pay for those membrane replacement costs, and if those costs are expected to go up over the next 6-7 years, whenever it comes time to replace.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Public Works Manager, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so during the construction, staff asked that question, and it always came back about $1 million. So last year, Aqua and staff actually went to the manufacturer and determined what the actual cost is in 2023 dollars. And the quote was $880,000. Then we also asked what is the timeline. It's before it always was 10 years, and a lot of it is based on there's no actually through the ACA. There's no actually set time you actually replace it. It's when the actual effluent is actually changing. So when the membranes will follow up and decay over time, we'll start seeing the actual E. coli and actually increasing. Once we're reaching our ECA limits, we'll have to change it. Hopefully we can go longer than 10 years. During the EA process, when the staff and the JP2G and Donald Deere and some of his counterparts went down to Port Carling at the time, they were hoping for anywhere they were hoping 10 years, but they're hoping like 15 to 20. The one thing staff are looking into to determine because that plant's been built longer, but it determined how similar sized plant can we actually go longer, because that will affect, as staff did recommend in 2023 budget to actual to put aside in a reserve for the actual replacement. To date, there's been no reserve put away for the actual membrane. As you noticed, that we had no money to put reserves in 2023. That was to keep costs on par, to keep the rates low, and on par other rate study. Hopefully that answers your question.
Is there any, so because this is wastewater related, this does have to come from the ratepayers that are utilizing that service?
So that one there, because it is benefiting ultimately the actual lake. Potentially could look at like there's other sources. For example, if it's benefiting the lake, could some of the taxation money of the levy money be used for that? Ultimately, this plant is a MBR plant, which membrane bioreactor plant. So it's a unique plant compared to other neighboring municipalities, which other treatment plant processes doesn't have this membrane cost. But it was designed for that, for the actual lake to lower phosphorus and E. coli. So potentially that the staff could look at posing like a cost sharing measure if deemed that was necessary, and that's something we could come back later in a report with alternatives.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. I'll also just confirm on that last point that may also be an opportunity for us to seek grants to fund that kind of replacement. And that will be part of that agenda when we're speaking to ministers at both federal and provincial level, as well as Roma and AMO. Good. Is there any other councillors that have any questions or comments on the presentation? I have just a couple. So I'm going to get you to slide back to your timeline slide. The one that mentions the grant application. Good. So just to confirm, the grant was applied for or the agreement was signed, or?
June 25th. Yeah, so the actual application, if you don't mind, Mayor, the actual application funding was December 2014, and the actual announcement was June 2015.
Good. And we had no shovel-ready proposal at the time of that application?
That's correct.
So a huge lesson learned here. We applied for something without knowing what the cost was going to be. Now, I know that the province going forward now won't even, an application for a grant won't even be competitive if it isn't shovel-ready. Is that correct?
Yeah, mostly the government's looking for projects that are ready to be implemented immediately, so designed and the like, yes.
Okay, so we need to hoist a board too that from a future planning, we have lots of capital projects in our forecast. Any capital project has to be shovel ready when we apply for a grant to make sure that we maximize the payout of that grant. In this case, we did not achieve that. Good, and I recognize you weren't here. I'm just recognizing it as something we need to do better as a corporation. Yes.
Yeah, and to make a note, and it's always hard for staff to estimate a project for funding, because a lot of these funding projects, if you noticed, it came out with a very short window for, I believe it came out in, well, I think it was August. I think it was August it came out, and staff had to do an application by basically a month or two after, and then the actual full application was only 3 months after the actual the first application. So it is challenging. The one note that some of the grants will pay for the engineering of it. In this case, the grant paid for engineering and the construction that was applied for. The problem, it's good to have shovel ready because you know the costs, but you're paying that actual design out of pocket, not part of the
Thank you. Great points. Good. One more slide. If you can slip to the one that lists the reserves. Yep. So when I reviewed the rate study, it gives an estimated value of all the infrastructure, including the water and the wastewater treatment plants. And that total is $46 million. And if that $46 million buys us 50 years of service, we should almost be investing $1 million a year away to pay for its future replacement. Those reserves are nowhere near where they need to be. And I acknowledge we are suppressing the reserves right now in order to minimize the impact on the residents today. But we're not getting rid of the impact, we're just pushing it down the road. This has got to be the message that we take to the province and the federal government to demonstrate just how unaffordable this is over the long term. The new unit was put in 2022 for wastewater, and we're seeing water towers, and here another up to $2 million here in the Cobden water treatment plant. There should be millions of dollars sitting there waiting for us to draw on. We don't have that. And we're just pushing that problem forward. So I'm not suggesting we start building them right now, but in terms of our messaging, it has to be stark. They need to know just how bad this is. Okay, those are my two that I wanted to hammer at this point in time. Does it trigger any other comments or questions from the members of council? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just to add on to that, while we're looking at water and while we're looking at wastewater, we also have to take a hard look at roads and fire halls and rinks, because all of that comes together as one. And when we're talking about putting away reserves, and we need to be putting away $1 million here and $1 million there, there's only so much money. So we have to start, I think, really taking a hard look at where our money's going, what can we do, how can we save, where can we start putting something aside here in order to achieve that. At the end of the day, we're only a handful of taxpayers. We're all paying the same taxes, all of us, but at the end of the day, there's a lot that still has to be done. And I agree, we have to get it into reserves, but at the end of the day, we're just trying to stay afloat here. And we're not alone. We are not the only municipality. There's 444 municipalities that are all in the same boat. We're not the only ones here. So I don't want to make it sound like we're all together in this. And we just have to, I think, for all of us and our ratepayers, just we really have to buckle down, see where we can save, what we can do moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Much appreciated. Excellent. If there's no other comments, and I can't see Councillor Bell anymore, but you,
He's there.
he's there? Okay, good. No questions? Okay, we will call for a vote on the original motion, which was to receive the presentation. So all those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you so much. Next item on our agenda, or actually what we'll do is we're going to take just a short 3-minute recess, bio break, allow those people that want to leave the chance to leave, and then we'll carry on with the rest of the agenda. So 3 minutes, please. Excellent. Welcome back to the Township Whitewater Region Regular Council meeting for Wednesday, October 18th. We are going to recommence here at 8:06 p.m. after a short recess. The next item on our agenda is 9.2, Site Plan Control Approval. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to enter into site plan agreement with the owner applicant to permit the construction of a microbrewery at 1641 Greenwood Road. And a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Trim, seconded by Councillor Moore. And Planner Benzie, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll be brief with this one. And I'll just remind Council too that the approval of site plans has been delegated to staff, and that happened through provincial legislation last year. What this report is to bring to Council to approve entering into an agreement, which gets registered on title with the applicant, and that has to happen still through bylaw. So that's what is happening today, and it also, there's a dual purpose of letting Township know about this new development in our community. So the site plan control application was submitted on June 30th by Keith Haycock on behalf of himself and Sharon Haycock for a microbrewery at the property at 1641 Greenwood Road, and this is right across the road from the industrial park. So the site comprises a microbrewery building as well as a covered porch and a parking area. And at present, the property also contains a dwelling and some outbuildings, but those are quite far back on the property, and they will be buffered from the brewery by existing trees on the property. So the property was actually rezoned to a rural exception zone, number 28, and this was back in 2020. So the purpose of this was to allow a microbrewery as a accessory or additional use on the property. And so a couple of years later, the site plan, the next phase of the process, was submitted, and as all new commercial development is covered by our site plan control bylaw. So in support of the site plan application, the applicant submitted a hydrogeological study that was prepared by JP2G, and this was to make sure that there was a suitable supply of water and to make sure that the site could accommodate the size of a septic system. And so that was a big part of our review, just looking at the location of the septic and with the parking, just to make sure it was all going to work. So community development staff as well as public works staff reviewed that report in conjunction with the site plan, and we are acceptable to the proposed construction and the layout of the site. The proposal meets all of the zoning requirements, and the applicant is required to meet all provincial requirements for small breweries in that a regulation that's listed there. So the application was circulated to internal and external agencies. We did not see or hear any major concerns. So the next steps, essentially, once and if council approves the bylaw today, is to enter into the agreement with the applicant, and then he can apply for a building permit and commence construction on site. So that's it with my report. Thank you, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much. And I'll go to Councillor Trim first. Any comments or questions? Good. Councillor Moore, seconder.
Nothing, thank you.
Any other members of council? Good. I'll just say I think this is outstanding. We've seen another commercial operation within Whitewater Region, and I remember in 2020 when they made their proposal, so I'm glad to see that we're going to see shovels in the ground shortly. And you've already approved the site plan? Yes. Perfect. Excellent. Good. Well, with that, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, 9.3, MPAC Data Sharing and Services Agreement. So the recommendation is that the Council of Township Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to enter into a data sharing and services agreement with the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Mover and a seconder, please. And Councillor Tabbert, Councillor Moore. And I'm assuming this is going to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this agreement is been created by MPAC, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, which is a body of the province of Ontario, to consolidate a number of agreements that they have to allow us to use a number of resources that they have at our disposal but they are not statutory requirements. They are pieces that they have created so that it makes our jobs easier. Municipal Connect being one of them, where we are actually able to live look at properties and assessments and all that type of information above and beyond just the assessment roll book. So that's the design of this agreement. It's just to consolidate all the agreements that they've had in the past into one clean agreement that has the lifespan of 3 years, or 4 years, and then after that can renew based on our approval.
Thank you, Treasurer. Any comments, Councillor Tabbert? No. Councillor Moore? Any other member of council? Councillor Trim?
Yes, reading through this rather long document, I noticed that reassessment, this confirms that reassessment will be through to the end of 2024. Mm-hmm. That's stuck out.
Good. Councillor Bell, I didn't miss you, did I? No?
Just one thing, so
yep.
With this agreement, is the township required to do anything on its part, or is it basically just sharing from the agreements that we've had in the past with them?
So on our part, it's just more or less a protection of privacy, which we already do, and it's the sharing of their information. So their information that they provide to us is proprietary, so we have to follow their regulations if we're to be able to disclose any of that. We have to refer back to them in order to actually disclose that information. Same thing as if somebody was to come and wants to look at the roll book, they're allowed to look at the roll book, not allowed to take pictures of it, but they're allowed to write the information out of that. Those type of rules, which we already follow.
Excellent. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you, Treasurer. Notices of motion. Is there any notices of motion to be placed on the floor tonight? I see none, so we'll move on. Number 11, correspondence. So there are 2 items that require direction. Now I'm going to just get the clerk's advice. Can I skip down to the now therefore be it resolved?
Yes, you can. So just for clarity, these were two items that were discussed at the last meeting of council. I think Councillor Tabbert spoke to both of them and asked that they come back, and so it's just fulfilling that that promise to do so. And these are just a little bit of resolutions that will give us directions for council officers' support, and for us then to proceed in notifying the principal municipality and the respective government ministries. So.
Thank you, Clerk. So the recommendation before us, the first one is, it's about the Ottawa River Frechette, and this was a request from a neighboring municipality to consider approaching and asking for an investigation on the Ottawa River. So I will jump to the now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Whitewater Region adds its full support to the efforts of the City of Clarence-Rockland in developing appropriate management tools and practices to reduce... Good. Thank you. Noted, Councillor Bell. Thank you. Okay. He obviously got a fire call. Good. I'll start again. So, recommendation is that the the Township of Whitewater Region adds its full support to the efforts of the City of Clarence-Rockland in developing appropriate management tools and practices to reduce occurrences of flooding of the Ottawa River and to lessen the negative impacts to its residents. Moved by Councillor Tabbert, seconder. Councillor Moore. And discussion. Is there any subsequent discussion? Councillor Tabbert.
No, Your Honor. It was pretty much said at the last meeting.
Perfect. Councillor Moore?
Nothing, thank you.
Any other members of council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Thank you. And it's carried. And we'll just note that we hope to be full participants in anything that goes forward. So I think one of our staff is from that area. be able to incorporate very clearly into their organization. Next item is a recommendation similar that came from our last council meeting, and I will jump to the now therefore it be resolved that the Township of Whitewater Region adds its full support to these efforts and encourages the province of Ontario to seriously consider the negative impacts these disruptive technologies are creating. And just before, for any listeners that are listening or members that are present, we are specifically speaking to Airbnb, VRBO, and similar digital platforms being the province establishing a regulatory framework requiring those, a regulatory framework that would require those digital platforms to participate in. Good. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Tabbert, seconded by Councillor Trim. Is there any comments? And maybe we should make a couple comments to this just because it there has lots of detail here. But is there any comments from Councillor Tabbert?
Not at this moment.
Councillor Trim.
I don't know if people noticed in the news, but just recently, I guess BC has become the second province to do what we're requesting. They just recently passed province-wide guidance, guidelines, restrictions, whatever, legislation with respect to this. Now, it applies so far only to communities of 10,000 population or more, with some exceptions for a few smaller ones that are adjacent to. So it is starting to spread, this idea. I believe Quebec is already provincially regulating this industry. And so our request is not going to be unusual. Thank you.
Thank you for those additional comments. Is there anything else from any member of council? Good. Call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Next on our agenda is a number of information items. And these were provided to the members of council earlier as part of your package. And I'll just highlight just a couple things on some of the items as we go through. And at the end, I'll make the opportunity available if there's any member of council that wants to go back and revisit or make a comment on one. The first one is the Algonquins of Ontario. As you can see by that attachment, they reached out wanting to create a relationship. I have already reached back with an email and asked staff if we could coordinate an opportunity, either virtually or in person, to establish that relationship. The second item is the County Council summary. I provided some context at our last council meeting, so I won't go into that, but the details are there if you have questions. The Pembroke Regional Hospital provided its annual report, and a large number of our population is serviced by this hospital. So that annual report may provide some context to you. Minister of Energy and the Minister of Energy has provided the projection for how they will power Ontario's growth into the coming years. You've already heard the discussion about the need for housing and the projected population growths. That correlates into a direct need for power. And this package will outline that proposed way that they're going to satisfy that increase in demand for electricity. And no surprise, the Ottawa River is involved. The next item is the Renfrew County District Health Unit Fall COVID-19 and Flu Vaccine Program update, so it's there in case you get questions. You also are provided with an annual report of everything that was achieved in the past year, and it's an incredible resource to know what that health unit does for our community members. I'll give you one example. They offer a dental program, including dentures to some degree, for vulnerable seniors, and at no cost. So full dental care for our seniors. There are 1,200 or 1,300 seniors within Renfrew County that are eligible for this, according to StatsCan. They have almost 1,100 registered and receiving treatment. So it is a huge welcome resource for our seniors community, and if you receive a phone call or know somebody, you can point them in that direction. The dental services are available right at the health unit in Pembroke. They also travel out and have a mobile unit that they do in different locations. So just one example of some of the services offered by the health unit. So I'd encourage you to use that if you're getting phone calls from residents that may need that kind of support. The next item is the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. The minister replied, just a follow-up from our discussion at AMO, our delegation, where we asked for some support for, please remind me, anaerobic digesters to produce electricity. So she provided some resources for our farmers that could access for more information, as well as just acknowledgement of how we used their funding to support our stormwater assessment here in Cobden. And again, stormwater has a direct impact on sewage treatment, and therefore it is doubly important to recognize that investment that was made to try to save us some costs. The last item is a document, and this was provided to provide some background. Mr. Deere and Mrs. Guest had met with me since their last presentation to council, had provided me some additional detail, and there it was provided for you to have as context before our discussion tonight. Good, that ends the information items. Is there any comments or questions on members of council on anything that was brought up? Councillor Trim.
Maybe repeating, Mr. Mayor, but when I was reading through, I was hoping that we would invite the Algonquins of Ontario to make a presentation to us so we could have a better understanding of what they're trying to do with the rest of the community in their the area of their treaty area. And secondly, obviously, your presentation, which to the Minister of Agriculture, which staff helped, made an impression. That we, if you don't remember, the mayor gave the minister an idea of helping to fund farmers that want to get into biogas, similar to how they help farmers with tile drainage. And I think that made an impression because it was a unique idea. And so these delegations sometimes really do make a difference.
Thanks, Councillor Trim. It's good to know that you were heard. That's what I'll take from that. And I think we can add that to our list when we're talking to Algonquins to include a delegation if possible, virtual if that's easy enough. Excellent. We'll move on to announcements. Next item on the agenda, if there's no other questions. Number 12 is announcements, and I'll start with the Deputy Mayor.
Nothing, thank you, Mayor.
Good. And Councillor Tabbert.
Yes, Your Honor. On October 21st, there's a household hazardous waste day in Cobden, or it's actually in Westmeath. Is it still happening?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have the hours.
9 to 1.
9 to 1. And that's all I have. There was a Halloween spook walk in Foresters Falls, but I haven't any further information. And it was supposed to be this weekend, so I don't know if there's anything, if anybody knows any more about it.
Perfect. If you do come across it, if you can share it, the staff can probably put it on the social media platform if it's available. Councillor Moore.
Yes, October 21st at 8:15 p.m. There will be fireworks at the Beachburg Fairgrounds, sponsored by the Beachburg Agricultural Society. Celebration of our amazing community and the volunteers who make it an incredible place to live. So that's at 8:15 next Saturday, 21st. Following public skating, yes. Well, yeah, it's this Saturday, sorry. This Saturday, the 21st.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Trim.
Nothing for me.
Okay, I have 4 announcements, and I'm going to go through them quickly. First, I just want to highlight that we have had some of our Whitewater residents and their family members compete at the Kayak World Championship this past week in Columbus, USA. There was 3 individuals that I'm aware of that I can mention. If I miss somebody, I would encourage you, please let me know, and I'll make sure I mention them later. Nick Troutman won silver in his group. Caleb Grady was 12th in the world, and Joel Kowalski rated 15th in the world. So congratulations to these 3 members. I don't know if Nick Troutman lives here, but his mom does. So I just wanted to recognize their achievement. And again, if I missed somebody, please let me know. The next item is October 15th to 21st, this week, is the Local Government Week, which is an opportunity to highlight the successes and hard works that all the local government professionals do to serve our community. There is so much opportunity in this field for our young people. And this work serves to recognize this and its potential. So first, I just want to recognize our employees and all that you do. It's hard when you just keep muscling through these long council meetings and all the work that goes into them, but we appreciate it. And I'm hopeful that our next generation is excited to take on some of these tremendous challenges that are going to be facing municipal government in the near future. Good. There are 2 other award systems that are being that have been announced, and I don't know if you have documents on this, but if not, we will forward them offline. There is the Ontario Volunteer Service Award that is calling for nominations, and the County of Renfrew Warden Awards that are calling for nominations. Both these nominations are due in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So if you have somebody in mind or want to encourage an organization to recognize somebody, this may be the perfect opportunity for us to make sure that a Whitewater residents are recognized at the county level and at the provincial level. So if you think of somebody or you want to share that with some of the organizations you're in contact with, I think that would be very much appreciated. And I'll follow up with some of the details that I have offline. Good. Good. We'll go on to item number 13, which is our bylaws. The recommendation is, be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the October 23rd agenda be taken as read and passed. And a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Trim. Is there any comments or questions on these bylaws listed? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Clerk, there's no closed session tonight?
No, there's not.
And it's confirmed there's no closed session, and therefore we are adjourned at 8:20 p.m. Thank you for your work tonight.